There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Wednesday, it's the major show.
Yeah, the major show.
All our shows are major.
The main show, and it's about Ted Kaczynski,
It is.
the Unabomber.
I still can't believe, I had to keep checking. I checked like 3 times. I'm like, really? We've never done a show about Ted Kaczynski?
Nope. What's up, Pooks?
And then, she started already.
Yeah, okay. You started already?
She's like, no,
Looking
now
at
they're
the fan.
Now they're talking to the oh, that's right.
Looking at the fan. Okay.
She's gotten really upset about that fan lately.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
No, I don't have time.
But every time you turn it on, she starts like yelling at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, yeah, we hadn't done this show, which is crazy because I thought that we had done it already. And I thought we had also, and I don't think we did Timothy McVeigh either.
No.
So we'll probably have to do that one of these days as well. But, because I remember when that happened. Well, I remember when this happened too.
Mad bombers.
Yeah. I mean, but this guy needs his whole show like that. We can't just do a Mad Bomber show unless it's like
They're too complicated. And the cases are very different. And the guys involved, Ted Kaczynski and Timothy McVeigh, are two very different dudes. Very different.
Yeah.
Different motives too.
Gramther's Hammer said, "What does the Unabomber, Steve R, and Gramther have in common? Do you know?"
They have a dicks.
Well, yeah,
What's up,
that's true, but
Yeah. I don't know.
that's a little general.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do they have in common? Is it like a joke or is it something like actual? Because I didn't know. I was like expecting like a dad joke punchline or some shit like that. But maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah, Unabomber did quite a bit of damage. Was crazy, but not dumb. You're gonna find out. I've read his manifesto. A lot of shit he was complaining about in the manifesto actually did end up happening. It's just the way he went around, the way he protested what was happening was not the way to do it.
Well, he was one of those people that was almost kind of like so intelligent that it almost like in some aspects goes around and becomes dumb again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Kind of. It was pre-internet age.
That's true.
That's had a lot to do with it. So the only way to get his message out was to call attention to himself. There was no YouTube back then. We'll get into it later. But he was trying to call attention to a problem he saw brewing. Although I think the ultimate manifestation of what he saw was he never would have lived to see it.
He's still alive, though.
Yeah, but it's still 20, 30 years away, a lot of the stuff. Maybe 50 years away, some of the stuff he was worried about. Like 100% gene-edited people made by corporations that you could buy. He's talking about replicants, like out of Blade Runner. He figured that was coming. There was just a bunch of shit in his manifesto that he was worried about. And you could make a gene-edited person probably, but bring them to market and the laws involved and everything, that's hundreds of years away. You couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I'm not really all that worried about it. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not all that worried about it. Yeah, Samantha said Unabomber has a manifesto. That's how you know you're maybe like treading on some thin ice when you have a manifesto. If you have a manifesto, just dial it back some. Dial it back.
Nowadays you just
That's
have
never a good sign.
Nowadays you just have a YouTube channel.
We don't have a manifesto on our YouTube channel. We're just fucking around.
Yeah. Okay. All right, you trying to get me to fucking talk about it early.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. I just commented on the thing, but I was just making a joke about it. Oh, Gramther said the Unabomber and Steve attended the University of Michigan, and Gramther works there.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought it probably had something to do with the campuses. John Smith's made a very funny comment. He said, "I'm guessing their motives all boil down to the same thing: a serious case of being a cunt."
Kinda.
Probably true.
Kinda.
Yes, probably true.
Kinda.
I mean, obviously.
He wasn't dumb. He was very intelligent.
Well,
Yeah, and he foresaw a lot of things that have already come to pass, and he didn't like it. It had to do with what corporations were doing and technocracy. Well, we'll get into it in a minute. We'll talk about it later. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Danny Rolling then said the Unabomber needed to get laid, and then maybe he wouldn't have bombed some random fuckers.
They weren't random. I think he targeted everybody. Everybody was targeted. I remember.
Not exactly.
I think some people opened things that they weren't supposed to open, but I think he was targeting heads of certain corporations.
Sometimes, but then sometimes he was picking people that were kind of like adjacent to some shit he was mad about, but it was just a random person that didn't have anything to do with. And sometimes too, like he would pick somebody that had something with like wood in their name or something like that.
Thinking that they were something. Must have thought they were linked to something.
Yeah.
Linked to a fucking.
I mean, he basically, like I said, it's like he did target, the heads of companies and stuff, but then some of the other people he targeted didn't really seem to have anything to do with anything. Like he just picked them out of a book in a library or something.
He probably thought they had something to do with something though.
Maybe. I don't really know. Thank you very much. David June gave us a super chat.
Thank you very much.
David Parker is here. Hey, you two. It was great seeing you Saturday. Your costumes were great. Thank you very much.
You,
yeah, we had a good time.
He didn't recognize
us.
He walked up to us. Walked up to me. It's like, who's this dude?
Well, it's funny because when we went to Mannequins and I had my Medusa costume on, Tina came up and she like looked right at me and then like went over and talked. And then like when I posted a picture later, she was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that was you."
Yeah.
So it's like I was apparently unrecognizable because a few people came up and was like, "Is that Jenny?" I didn't think I looked that different, but okay.
David forgets how small I am in person.
You're so small.
Yeah, you're so small.
That's what I say to Pokey all the time.
Yeah, what's up, Paul?
Why are you so small?
Yeah, she's tiny.
DJ Maniac said, "Tom, I'm going to send John Waters over to show you how to pencil your beard properly." Bitch
ass motherfucker.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
Bitch ass motherfucker. I told you what Big John said. Fucking, he's this old biker. Fucking hangs out. Fucking Oasis. He had big old one of them long fucking beards like that. He goes, "Come on, we're here. Come on. What's this? What's this? It looks like something for the kitty milk." I was like, "What?" "Yeah, you take a little saucer of milk and a little kitty come lap it up. That's for kitty milk. Let me get some kitty milk. Milk. That's what they call it. Milk. Milk.
Got
kitty
milk?
milk. Kitty milk. Yeah."
John Smith said, "If you're writing a manifesto and you're not a political figure, maybe pause and rethink your life." Actually, even if you are a political figure, no, but just don't write a manifesto, okay? Danny Rowling said, "Wasn't Ted's mom sort of like Ed Gein's mom?" I don't really know. There wasn't like a huge amount about his mom. I think his mom like didn't really want to know it was him because I don't really want to like jump too far ahead, but one of his relatives did turn him in. It wasn't his mom, but you know what I mean? But that's the thing, like you never want one of your relatives to be like a mad bomber or a serial killer or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's like, I get that they were kind of just like, oh shit, like should we turn him in and shit like that. DJ Maniac said, "Mine gets in the bowl when I eat Fruit Brute, LOL." Yeah, Danny Rowling spoiled it. His brother did. His brother turned him in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so, well, actually, it was kind of like his sister-in-law, like, convinced the brother to turn him in, which was absolutely the right thing to do. And I know that he felt bad about it and shit, but we'll get into that. But, I mean, he was killing people, so, you know, like I said, whether he had some decent ideas or whatever, because, yeah, like I said, some of the shit that he wrote, like, sounds kind of crazy, but, like, some of the shit that he wrote, like, sounded kind of legit, and it's like, some of it was, like, you know, like he had a point and stuff, but that doesn't justify.
He was Harvard educated.
Yeah, well, he went to Harvard, he went to University of Michigan, and he said, yeah, we'll get into all that.
Yeah, he's not dumb.
No, he was actually a super genius.
Right, he wasn't crazy per se. Not in that way. I think he was suffering from a little bit of delusion. I think his imagination was running away with him, I think.
Well, he kind of, I think he fell into...
Some stuff was real he was worried about. Some of it wasn't that real.
I think he fell into kind of one of those things, and a lot of very, very highly intelligent people fall into this too. And we'll kind of get into like his background and maybe, you know, it's, you know, why things turned out the way they turned out. But I have know like some very, very intelligent people that they're very, very good at, like in his case, mathematics, but socially, they're very socially awkward. They're very isolated, and they have a hard time relating to people. So they're usually kind of like loners, and so they spend a lot of time with themselves and with their own ideas and inside their own heads, and they don't really have any outside feedback, I guess. You know what I mean? And so it can kind of become a self-perpetuating kind of shit. And I think that really, like, it was an extreme in this case because he deliberately, like, went off the grid, like, to get away from people and, like, didn't see anybody for, like, long stretches of time, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably not... Somebody like that, I think he probably would have been better if he'd have, like, stayed in. But I mean, you know, I'm an introvert too. I get, like, not wanting to hang out with other people and shit like that. But it's like being inside your head like that all the time and never seeing anybody ever, like talking to other people ever, like that's probably not a good thing. Especially somebody with his level of intelligence. That's always going to end badly.
I'm going to say this right before we even get into the case. Had he been living during the age of the internet that you have today, none of this would have happened. Because he wouldn't have used
probably not.
No, because he would have used different techniques and he wouldn't have been alone. He'd have been in a group of fucking YouTubers and shit and people on Twitter talking about this.
Yeah.
You know, that's...
Which maybe might have been better because because maybe he would have blown off some steam and he wouldn't have felt the need to, like, blow people up.
Actually, blowing people up in the violence route is actually counterproductive to your mission if you're trying to stop things like technocracy. The best way to stop it is to expose it. So you need kind of like your own media channel and your own reporters to try to fucking blow the lid off of things. And that actually is how you do it. Okay? If you do things like blow shit up, what it does is it kind of sullies your fucking belief system, and then they say, well, that's just a violent conspiracy theory for Unabombers. And even if it was true, they'll use their
That's what I'm saying. You're really shooting yourself in the dick.
You're shooting yourself in the dick.
You're shooting yourself in the dick.
Basically, you want to do kind of like what fucking AJ does. If you're worried about technology, just keep talking about it, and that's a far more effective than fucking acts of violence. Acts of violence like this. In this case, you guys know me, fucking soldier, infantry, 101st Airborne Division. There are a time for guns. Sometimes that's what it takes. But when you're dealing with a fucking problem like he's talking about and ideas like he's talking about, that's the last thing you want. You just want to expose it and talk about it and let everybody know that things like this exist. And
because
that's the most
you really want to win people over to your cause.
Right,
I mean, whatever that cause is. I'm not saying that I agree with it or disagree with it. I'm just saying that that's the way of going about it. The second you go around like blowing up innocent ass people, which he did,
they can now turn against
everyone's just going to go, oh, well, obviously you're a loon, which kind of you are. Because why would you...
Why'd you go that far?
You know, it's like not only is that morally repugnant, it's also ineffective.
It's ineffective.
So,
there's certain,
like, for what your goal is.
There's certain tactics where moral repugnance and outrage is what you want, but not in a case like this. You know, fucking. If you want fucking moral outrage, you're in a situation like the Mexican cartels where you weaponize that. You're not trying to be a good guy. You're trying to be maximum bad guy. That's what.
Yeah, but like their goals are different.
That's their goal. Very different. Is to be fucking feared.
And like I said, I'm not saying that's good.
Right. No.
Don't do that.
It's just what's useful. We're not talking about what's.
Yeah, I'm talking about what their desired outcome is.
Right.
What their desired outcome is. His desired outcome, he went about it in the stupidest possible way.
Yeah, it was not a good way of doing it. He waged war against something when it wasn't time for that. It was time to just talk about it and let other people know. Had he had a fucking badass publication or something that he could fucking, a way where he could release media, it'd have been a lot better.
I said, nowadays, although the thing about it, though, is that nowadays, if he had grown up now, I don't know if he would have even had necessarily have had the same kind of, like, anti-tech kind of thing. I mean, he was a Luddite, essentially. Like, he didn't really want anything to do with technology. He thought it was harmful, like, across the board. So I'm not really sure if he would have gotten on board with all of the technology, even to the point of, like, getting his message across. I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment.
He would have been in, like, the guys that made the Georgia Guidestones. He would have been in the group that is doing like the Great Reset, where you're trying to stop oil production and energy production, and because it's harming the earth. He'd have been, what do they call it, Extinction Rebellion. He'd have been about like that. They believe that.
John Smith said, I'm guessing all that time he was experimented on by MK Ultra didn't help his disposition.
Yeah,
we'll get into that.
Yeah.
No one's quite sure if it was MK Ultra, but for sure he volunteered for some really fucked up psychological experiment. So yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. And a lot of people do kind of point out that maybe, although I will note that he had problems prior to that, like as a kid. But a lot of people point to that as kind of like the thing that fucked him up, like the kind of like turning point in his life or whatever.
I don't think Kaczynski was a joke. Okay, he wasn't a joke. A lot of stuff he talked about, there's something to those issues. It's just the strategy he decided to use was improper strategy for the problem that he was facing. Those bombs fucking worked against him, not for him.
Which, like I said, that's what I meant about him being like super intelligent in some ways, but then doing like really dumb shit like that. I mean, that's clearly a really dumb thing to do. Like, you have to think of like what consequences is this action going to have? I mean, had he been able to think that through?
Trying to call attention to himself, but it didn't help his cause.
No, not at all. Well, and the weird thing about it too is that he did this shit, which, like I said, you know, I'm just giving a very general thing right now, but he did this shit for what, like 17 years before they caught him, and it's like he didn't really try to call attention to himself or his cause all that much until later, you know what I mean? So I kind of feel like if he was trying to do that, then even if you wanted to resort to, you know, not maybe terrorism tactics, but doing stuff like, you know, I don't know, just like fucking going someplace and like sabotaging someplace that, you know, when no one was there or something like that, and then leaving a message. Like, you would think that he would do more things like that, where he wasn't like actually killing people that, like I said, most of them didn't have anything to do with anything that he was mad at, you know? He just kind of like chose them at random, sort of. Gramther said, was the Unabomber the original incel? Debate and discuss.
No. I don't think that wasn't his issue.
No, but there was a tiny aspect of that. He did date women sometimes, but not all that much. And there was a point to, which I'll kind of get into, but there was a point too where he went through a really weird thing where he said that he went through a period where he's like, well, I'll never touch a woman unless I become a woman. And then, like, he had this really weird thing where he actually even went to, like, a counselor and say he wanted to start the process for having a sex change.
Weird.
And then, like, but he, like, chickened out after a while.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so he did have, like, some incel aspects. And, you know, and we'll kind of get into that later because there was, like, an incident that happened later on, like, when he was working with his brother and stuff like that.
All right.
So, let me see. Hold on. I saw something else that I wanted to... David June said, when the hell did Tom get tatted up? He's had those the whole time.
Yeah.
I guess just because for a long time, like, you didn't wear sleeveless. But yeah, you got those.
I've always had those.
You got those in the Army, so you've had those since
when I was a kid.
Since the 90s.
Yeah.
So yeah. Looking like a badass. I would not talk to him at the bar because he'd probably beat my ass for not paying full death.
Oh, man.
You do look like you'd beat people's ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Smith said, personally, I think he just wanted to kill and maim. The cause was just the justification he used. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning toward that as well. I mean, I don't know the guy, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that happens with a lot of these type of dudes. I kind of feel like, because he did say outright a few times that the motive for doing what he was doing was just revenge. You know what I'm saying? So I think he just wanted to kill people. And like you said, he's, you know, coming up with... Sometimes really intelligent people can come up with really good justifications for doing what they wanted to do to start with. So there could be an aspect of that as well. Slash said, you guys looked great all costumed up. Thank you very much. He says, happy belated Halloween. Again, thank you. Happy Halloween. I know I had a really good Halloween. That costume took a very long time to do, but I was happy how it turned out. I actually did it twice because we went out Saturday night and I did it, and then I did it again for the show. John Smith also said there's a theory that Ted is also the Zodiac, but I think every man in the 60s and 70s has been accused. Yeah, because I think they did think about it for a little while because he did have some similarities, but I think that they determined that he was like in a different he was in a different state or whatever. Like, they could determine that he was there, like, when some of the Zodiac crimes took place. So, Murder Hornet says, hey, everyone, been a long day, so I'm just going to lay my head down and listen. Okay, that's good. Gramther says, question for Tom. If Ted had gone on T, would the outcome be different?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe, would it have been worse?
Been about the same.
Discuss.
He'd have been in better shape, but it'd been about the same.
He just still...
Probably just made more bombs.
That's what I was saying. It's like it probably would have made it worse, if anything.
He'd have been more motivated.
Yeah, I don't think he needed that. I mean, he was motivated enough as it was,
Not worried about fucking Ted.
But that's what the show's about, though. So you kind of at least need to pretend to be
Ted. I'm not worried about Ted making more bombs. He's locked up.
Yeah, he better not be making more bombs in there. I always wonder, though, like, they still let him, like, correspond with people, like, outside, in the outside world, and I'm like, hopefully they're checking all the fucking letters that he sends out.
He's not saying anything.
Make sure he's not putting no fucking explosives in there.
He's probably not saying anything.
No, well, I don't know about nowadays, because I think, like, the newest thing that I found was from a couple years back, but, I mean, he's writes tons and tons and tons of letters.
Mm-hmm.
He's a writer, for sure. Well, when they went into his cabin, like, when they caught him, they find, like, 40,000 pages of stuff in there that he'd written down?
I don't know. Let's get into the fucking...
He didn't really have that much else to do,
Yeah.
He didn't have no water or electricity.
We can get into
or
the case. Yeah, he lived in basically a log cabin, kind of.
It wasn't even... it was a cabin. It was a room.
Yeah, it was like a shack. Yeah.
It was, like, smaller than this room.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was 10 by 12 or 10 by 14 or something like that, which is about the size of, like, an average bedroom.
Yeah.
Like, in an average house.
Yeah.
But it was, like, a log cabin. Sort of. So, I don't even remember what the inside of it looked like. But I remember because it was all over the news. I just remember them, like, pulling him out. And him looking like a bum.
Yeah. He's like a bum living in a damn shack.
It's crazy because when you see pictures of him when he was young, when he was, like, a professor and stuff like that, he's a good-looking dude. And he looked totally normal.
He went backwards in time, man. He was trying to live off the land. He's living off-grid.
He was, yeah.
Living off
Which,
grid.
like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of people wanted to. I would not fucking do that. Fuck that. We didn't, like, make this much scientific progress so I could, like, go out there and wipe my ass with a pine cone. No, thank you.
He wasn't real good at it.
No.
Okay.
Well,
they got guys.
He did it for a long time.
They got guys. Yeah, he still wasn't that good at it. There were guys who just with hand tools and with just like a couple of acres of land, cut down all the trees, and then from the trees they have enough wood to make a real fucking house. Okay, that's how good some dudes are, with plumbing and everything, like something out of the fucking late 1800s, like pre-electricity era, even with the fucking pumps, pumping water and everything in there. They can even put fucking water reservoirs on the top of the house and pump water up to it, and then they can paint it black so you have hot water coming out through your there's all kinds of stuff that dudes can do just with hand tools. If they have the skill. Yeah, I mean, if you have the time and the wherewithal, you can do all kind of shit. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's like, why? I don't understand, like, why you just want to make your life that much harder when you don't really need to. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, like I said, if you have the skills, you don't need to live hard. I mean, fucking, there are people out there that just with regular hand tools can make a 2-story house, with fucking 7-8 bedrooms in it and fucking, a garage and everything. And like I said, people should totally be allowed to do that. Like, I don't have a problem with people doing it. People will be like, yeah, I'm out. I don't really like this whole cell phone, social media kind of shit. I just want to live out in the mountains somewhere and, like, hunt and fish and stuff. Go for it. Yeah. Doesn't bother me none. It's not my life, is it? It's like, I wouldn't really want to do that, I don't think. But, I mean, it might be nice to do, like, for short periods. A lot of those beautiful Victorian homes were mostly handmade back in the 1800s. People forget that. They were made with hand tools. Yeah. And a bunch of dudes working. But one guy could do that too, if they're good. They have time. They're not in a hurry. They usually build a house to live in while they're building the other house. Yeah. John Smith said, I'm guessing they let him correspond so the FBI knows who to keep an eye on. Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, I guess probably they are. Lion X Warrior said, thank you for covering this. Very interesting topic. Well, you're very welcome. Like I said, I'm amazed that we hadn't covered this already because I could have sworn that we had, but oh well. Hugo's laughing at my pinecone thing. Well, like I said, I'm just saying that, look, I get that he had some points about, like, technology overreach and shit like that, and that's true, all right? But
I don't know, man. I would want to go back. I wouldn't want to go back to like pre-industrial revolution. I wouldn't want to go back to like before there was, running water and vaccines and electricity and shit. Fuck that shit. It's like people died really young back then. Like they died of really easily preventable diseases. It's like all the food had gross ass shit in it. It's like, I don't.
Electricity
No
solves
thanks.
a lot of problems.
No thanks.
Electricity solves a lot of problems, especially in a kitchen. Things like immersion blenders and fucking little bitty toaster ovens, toasters, electric hot plates, mixers. Electricity is fucking critical.
Yeah.
It saves a lot. It's very labor saving. Yeah, you had some fucking hand cranked mixers, but no, you want an immersion blenders. You want little electric ovens and fucking hot plates, and you want little things made out that you want the little things that electricity could do.
Well, the thing about it was that I kind of feel like one of his main things that he was always harping on was that he thought, he wanted to go back, it seemed like, from what he was saying, he wanted to go back to like pre-industrial revolution. He's like, the advent of the industrial revolution, and all this technology and progress and stuff like that has actually made people more fucked up and unhappier, and has them doing like useless pursuits like watching sports teams and like watching entertainment and stuff like that. I'm like, but the whole point of technological progress, at least to a degree, is to give people more leisure time so they can do shit that they want to do instead of being, because prior to the Industrial Revolution, it's like you had to, like, doing laundry, for example, was like a 1 or 2 day affair. It was just like a whole, you had to do everything by hand. You had to scrape everything, and you know what I mean? It's like, why the fuck would you want to go back to that? No thanks.
Because he doesn't know about it.
You can if you want. I'm not stopping you. Like, if you want to go back and do that, you have a good time, okay? You just go in the woods and go do your laundry in a creek and, like, have the whole, like I said.
They were hand washing laundry all the way up into the 30s.
Yeah.
And you could do it in the 40s, too. And they had people in the 50s hand washing the laundry. People fucking did it in the 80s, I remember.
Yeah.
And people that didn't have any fucking money, like students and everything.
Well,
whatever
some
you
things,
wore that day, you wore that shit in the shower.
I've done that.
Washed it while it was on, and then washed it in the shower with you, folded it up, and dried it out. One clothing fucking at a time.
Well,
so
now
you never let it back up.
Now sometimes I have to hand wash stuff that can't go in the washing machine, because sometimes I don't have, like, I'm not taking the shit to be dry cleaned or anything like that. So sometimes I'll kind of like hand wash things like that, or stuff that's like real delicate. And even that's a pain. So I can't even imagine like doing all the fucking shit.
Yeah.
Remember I said, like, before I saw that short on MST, which I think was from the 30s, and they were talking about how people used to wash their hand wash their clothes in gasoline, right?
Gasoline.
Yeah. And they were trying to tell you, it's like, hey, don't blow yourself up.
Yeah. For people who were worried about it, wasn't the same gasoline.
Yeah, it was a different thing. It was still flammable, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Didn't have any of the detergents in it and all kinds of other anti-knock stuff. Gasoline used to be a lot more mild. You'd be able to put it in your hair. And people used gasoline as hair pomade. Had a lot of oil in it too. Weird.
Then they're all smoking and like,
whoosh. Yeah. Well, I think the fucking gasoline. I think the gasoline would evaporate.
I hope so, because like I said, otherwise you're blowing your fucking head up.
Yeah, but they were trying to kill lice and parasites and shit.
Which again,
it worked.
Yeah, but it's like, why the fuck would people want to have to do that? It's like, we have shampoo and shit now. It's like, you know what I mean? We don't have to put gasoline in our hair to kill the lice.
There was something different back then. They got lice. It had something to do with different fucking living standards.
People still get lice, but usually
very
it's
rare.
But yeah, I don't think it's very common now. If anybody that has like little kids, and because I remember like when I was a little kid, like in the 70s and 80s, every now and then they'd have somebody come in and do like a lice check. Every now and then they would find one kid. Yeah. But not that often. And that was like in the 70s and 80s. And usually, it's a kid from like a poorer neighborhood or something like that. Because like I said, it's shitty, but that's what happens. Yeah. But I don't know how common it is nowadays because I don't have any kids that age.
I guess back in the day, living conditions were a lot worse and hygiene wasn't as good.
And, that's what I mean.
Lice. Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing. It's like, look, the world is trying to kill you. Nature is trying to kill you. Not trying to kill you like, it's not evil outright, but it doesn't care about you. You know what I mean?
It was also more rural back then. So neighborhoods were closer to the woods, and woods were really woods. They went back fucking dozens of hundreds of miles in some places. So you were on the edge of fucking the forest. So I imagine it was easier for lice to get you.
Yeah.
There were more of them, probably. I don't know. I remember the way Mississippi was in the 70s. Wasn't like that. But maybe it was back in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah,
I don't know why they were getting
probably
lice.
was.
Yeah.
I imagine it probably was. Well, like you said, it's probably more rural, and they didn't
rural.
really
It's like-
have...
It's like being out in the Amazon or something.
I mean, maybe they were all taking a bath in the same water, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? They were probably like running around and
Or not taking a bath very often.
not taking a bath very often, sure. Well, that's one thing would lead to the other. If you had to
Yeah.
take a bath with like everybody's in the same water, because I know that happened. But Granther said, didn't Dennis Rader's fame irritate the Unabomber? I seem to recall Ted wrote a manifesto talking on BTK. Did he really? I didn't find that. But it's like, yeah, we're going to have to look that up because that would be super funny. David June, thank you very much for the super chat. Said, tell my friend Gandalf to watch Dr. Sleep and not to be such a lightweight when it comes to blazing. Okay.
Watch Dr. Sleep, goddammit. It's a good movie. Yeah, Dr. Sleep was good. Especially the director's cut. Director's cut's better than the theatrical cut. Yes, me had a lot of extra shit in there. A lot more of a complete story.
John Smith said, technology has solved a few problems. If you stood on a rusty nail on Monday, people were coming to your funeral on Wednesday. Exactly. That's what I mean. It's like, back in the day, you know, people would get a fucking cold or some shit, or measles, and they would die from that shit. So, no thanks. I don't want to go back to that. Richard Brown said, have you covered the Yorkshire Ripper case on this channel? We did, but it was a very long time ago. I don't even remember what episode it was. Probably pre-100, I want to say, before we were even on camera, when it was just audio.
Probably.
Maybe. But I'm pretty sure we covered that. I'm pretty sure. I like to do, like, a lot of British, you know, because I lived in the UK for a little while, like, back in the 90s. So I did cover, like, a Yorkshire Ripper. I think we did the Moors murders, but that might have been on, like, a killer couples show. And we did some other stuff as well. So, Camp Guy said, my daughter used to get lice. It drove my wife crazy. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't know. Now it's making my head itch now that we're talking about it. You know what I mean? It's just like when you start talking about spiders, like, you're just kind of like, eh,
No, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Well, probably because you weren't listening.
Yeah. No, I was listening.
That's probably why.
I was listening. I just don't get that.
John Smith said, the myth that lice would only live in clean hair was just propaganda put out by the smelly kids' moms. Yeah, I heard that. I actually heard that as well. That's like, oh, well, no, it's only if your hair is really clean. They don't even like dirty hair. I'm like, I don't think I believe that.
Lice will get into anybody.
Yeah, I don't think lice are particular. They're just like, oh, it's hair. Okay, that'll work. You know, they're not real picky. All right, so a couple shout outs that I have. I think I said this one before, but I wanted to make sure to do it on the main show like I usually do. But we have a new patron, our first one in a long time. And their name is Master of Dungeons. Okay. So thank you very much, Master of Dungeons, our newest patron in... I don't even remember when the last one was.
Why don't we talk about those?
Yeah, I'm going to do that too. I'm gonna do that. Just, you know, I have it like right there. Right. I have it, everything written down.
You want me
Everything's organized.
I'm not managing it. I'm not going to manage.
Yeah, I got like all this...
manage it. Okay. All right.
He acts like I don't have a big long thing of notes.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know.
But yeah, we just got a package like an hour ago, actually, from Louie, friend of the show, who sent us 2 kick-ass movies. One of which is Tombstone with Kurt Russell, the Crussell, and Val Kilmer, which is good because I love this movie, but I haven't seen it in a really, really long time. And also sent us Platoon, the collector's edition. So thank you very much, Louie. So I guess these are going to be the 2 movies that we're going to do for next week's matinee. So that's all sorted out. We haven't done Platoon, have we? We did, no, we didn't. We did, what was the other one? We did Full Metal Jacket. That was what I was thinking, the Stanley Kubrick one. But we haven't done Platoon, because that's Oliver Stone, right? Yeah. All right, so we'll probably do those for the next matinee. DJ Maniac said, did you start on that book I sent you yet? I've already finished it and started another. I'm going to start reading it probably tomorrow or Friday because I think I'm putting up a review of it On Monday. There should be a review of it going up on Monday, which means that either tomorrow or Friday I'll start reading it, because usually I read them Thursday, Friday, or over the weekend, and then like I usually record a review of them. But that's the next one on my list. And also somebody recommended the book The Black Farm, and I bought that one as well. I think it was only $3. So I'm gonna do that one on the 14th, I think. So I haven't read that one yet either. But yeah, I'm gonna read it in a day or two. Like, I'm gonna get started on it. So did you like it? Or DJ Maniac said it's a fast read. Oh, okay, well that's good. That's good. So it'll probably be a couple days. Then I'll get it read. All right. So are we ready to start on the shit now?
I've been waiting for you to start.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Don't be a smartass. I'm answering questions.
Okay.
Danny Rowling said Ted had some pretty good off-grid cabin making skills. Yeah, I thought that him and his brother had built that cabin, but like I said, it's not a big cabin. It was just like a room essentially.
Man, it's like I told you, those fucking Victorian fucking mansions were all built off-grid, pre-electricity, with hand tools. Most of them, most of that shit. You could do a lot better. They weren't that good.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's like, I don't mean to cast aspersions on anybody's house building, cabin building skills, but it basically just kind of looked like a shack,
Yeah, they got fucking two little Indonesian-looking guys that just with a couple of little blades and it's like a stick with a fucking flat blade on the end of it, can go out into the fucking jungle where they live and build a fucking paradise-looking house just out of the dirt. They're fucking digging it out of the dirt and making mud and filling it full of water, make a swimming pool and making all kinds of shit. Fucking getting shit out of bamboo and making bamboo roof for it, and beautiful, You can see it on YouTube. I mean, it looks like something you paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for, and they just made it out of stuff that was right there in the jungle.
Which is pretty awesome.
And a couple of hand tools, yeah. Two little Indonesian guys.
How long did it take them, did they say?
Like a couple days.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah, not at all. A couple days. They show it happen in fast motion.
Yeah. Well, obviously you can't wear it.
Right.
You can't watch a video that's 2 days long.
And then they pipe fucking water in, and there'll be pools outside and pools inside, and there's a whole water system and everything for the houses. Looks cool.
That seems like a good skill set to have.
Yeah. And they're digging down into the ground, making underground, rooms, tunnels and stuff, and it's all decorated. The walls are all decorated. They'll with the little blades, they'll make like columns and places where candles can go, and
sconces. You mean?
Yeah,
like
little alcoves and stuff.
Little alcoves, yeah.
And they'll fucking cut little statues into the walls, and fucking beautiful. You could live in there.
That's badass.
Yeah.
Maybe they could build me a house underground somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know if it's built. If most of that shit doesn't look like it would last, you'd have to go in there and treat it.
Yeah,
with something to keep the sand from falling. But you could do that.
To shellac that shit.
Shellac it or something.
Danny Rowling said, I heard Ted try to replicate Pa Engel's cabin from Little House on the Prairie. I think even theirs was nicer and bigger. Yeah. Theirs even had like a loft. I don't think his had a loft. Yeah, Gramther said he had been estranged from his brother for decades, but his brother still recognized his nutty writings. Yeah, I think it was, like I said, his sister-in-law kind of thought that the manifesto kind of sounded like him too. And then I think it was in particular like a couple specific turns of phrase that he used. And his brother's wife was just kind of like, man, that sounds just like your brother. Even though she'd never met him, but she'd read some of his letters and stuff. She said, man, that sounds just like your brother. And the brother was like, no, it couldn't be. But then he started reading stuff and he was like, uh-oh, maybe it might be. But yeah, it was something like, you can't, what did he say? You can't eat your cake and have it too. I think that was one of the phrases where usually it's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, but he would say it like reversed. And that was like a really specific thing that he always said. And he recognized that like in the manifesto, and he was like, uh-oh. I don't think that was the only thing, but that was one of the things that stuck out to him, I think. What?
What's up? What do you want me to do about it?
Oh my God.
What you need?
Listen to her.
She calls me for something.
Listen to her crying. She's like, oh my God, what's the matter? What's the matter?
She doesn't want anything.
She's going to go tear those books up now. All right, so we're talking about today Dr. Theodore Ted Kaczynski. They actually call him the Unabomber. I had forgotten about this, but they called him the Unabomber because before they caught him, it was supposed to be like an acronym for University and Airline Bomber. So it was UNABOM. You know what I mean? Because most of his targets were at universities or, you know, heads of airlines and stuff like that. So mostly known as a mathematician, like before he started blowing stuff up. But yeah, I think 17 years was his reign of terror before they actually caught him. Of all the bombs that he sent, 3 people died and 23 others were injured. So he was born in 1942 in Chicago. His parents were second-generation Polish Americans. Now, one thing that happened very early, like when he was still a baby, that may have contributed, I don't know if this contributed, but some people have pointed this out. So he got some kind of like rash or hives or something like that when he was 6 months old. So he got taken to the hospital and they put him in isolation. Like nobody was allowed to come in and see him because they didn't know what it was, I guess. And they kind of kept him in there like that for 8 months. Now, after he came out of the hospital, his mom said that that he was healthy, like he was okay, but was unresponsive. So I thought that was like kind of interesting, that was like a very early experience that he had. I don't know if it had anything to do with something like some shit that happened later on. So when he was in 5th grade, they did an IQ test on him. His measured IQ at that time was 167.
You're smart.
Which, yeah, that's like super genius. That's super genius.
That's smarter than me.
That's smarter than most people.
So,
that's smarter than pretty much everybody. That's up there. That's up there with like Stephen Hawking level.
Yeah.
That's like Stephen Hawking level.
Good, yeah.
So, so since he scored so high in the IQ test in 5th grade, they actually allowed him to skip 6th grade and go right to 7th. Now, he later described this as being like a big turning point in his life because, and I've seen this happen because I went to school with a kid who skipped a grade or 2, and it's kind of shitty because they don't, you know, they're really smart and they can do all the schoolwork and everything like that, but they're not like emotionally mature enough to like hang with older kids. And a lot of times too, you know, obviously they're physically smaller and like, you know, they're younger. So sometimes the older kids, because kids are assholes, you know, so they're going to pick on him. And that's pretty much what happened to him. Like he had a lot of bullying and shit like that because he was much smaller than the other kids and younger and stuff like that. So I don't know if he developed this or if he always had this, but he did kind of have, he was very, very introverted. He was like afraid of other people. He was also afraid of buildings, which, okay. And he would basically, like, he would go out and play with kids, but he'd be like over here next to him, like playing on his own, like, and wouldn't talk to them or like interact with them in any way. You know, he was kind of a person, and I was like, I don't want to like make this sound too weird because I used to do this too, but like when guests would come to your house or whatever, like he'd go up and hide like in the attic, and I'm like, that's not that weird though, because I used to do that too. I'm like, oh my god, people, gross. And then like I'd go like him in the other room, you know what I mean? But yeah, he used to do that kind of stuff. He didn't really like being around people at all. He was very much a loner. Now his mom got really, really worried about this. Like I said, he was only in, you know, he was maybe like 12 or 13 at this point, 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there. His mom got really worried about him. That he wasn't really like making any friends or, you know, learning any social skills or anything. So she was going to enter him. It's, you know, the very famous child psychologist, whatever, Bruno Bettelheim. He was doing a study for autistic children around this time, and she was actually going to enter him in that, but she never got around to it. So that went on for a little while. He eventually went to high school, and he was like, I mean, he was just like miles and miles like ahead of everybody else. Like particularly like his first year of high school, they said the math was too easy for him. And he basically became really obsessed with mathematics around this time, and he would like lock himself in his room and like do all these differential equations and that kind of stuff. And like I said, didn't really hang out with people or socialize with them, didn't really have any social skills. Now, like I said, he was so far ahead of everybody else, like they put him in an advanced math class, but that still wasn't advanced enough for him. So they basically let him skip 11th grade also. And then after that, like he took some summer school, like, for English and some other things. So they let him graduate early. Like he actually graduated from high school when he was 15. And because of his, sterling academic record and how intelligent he was, they actually encouraged him to apply to Harvard. And he was accepted. He got accepted when he was 16. And he started going there in fall of 1958. I believe he also got a full scholarship, which is amazing. But like I said, because he was so intelligent and because he'd done so well in mathematics, they thought, he's going to do like really well, which he did for a time. And in a way, like, I think that one of the things that's really kind of tragic about this story is that he was so smart and he was so good at what he did that it seemed like he pissed it all away. Like he could have like made something of himself, you know what I mean? It's like I said, look at Stephen Hawking, for Christ's sake. It's like, why he could have been another Stephen Hawking. It's like, why did he just have to blow people up? It's like he just fucking wasted it. I don't know. That just made me mad.
He came up with his own reasons why he had to do it.
I know, but it's like that just made me mad because it just seemed like a waste. I'm like, it's so rare that like somebody of that intellect like comes along. You could have done something good with that, but he just didn't. He just pissed it away. Like I
don't want to hear
that. She's just like crying the whole time. Oh,
there's nothing I can do about it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. What do you want?
She's upset.
What? She's looking at the fan.
She's like, turn the fan off, Daddy.
The fan.
Turn the fan off. Yeah. She doesn't like it. It's very upsetting for her. So this is the study that we were talking about earlier. So while he was at Harvard, there was like a psychiatrist named Dr. Henry Murray, and he was supposedly like an expert on what they call stress interviews.
No.
And so he was doing a multi-year like personality study, and he was looking for volunteers for that. And, a lot of college students back around, that's for extra money, like they would volunteer for these kind of studies. And so Ted and like, I think like about a couple dozen other people like also volunteered for it, maybe 21 other people, I think, if I remember correctly. So basically what they said, now they think that this study was probably funded by the CIA, which is where the whole MK Ultra thing came along, like it was kind of like a mind control type of thing. And a lot of people think that this particular event, or actually it wasn't just one event, it was like a 3-year, because he would go back like every so often and like they would do it again, you know what I mean? Was maybe like the catalyst for what ended up happening, you know what I'm saying? So what they would do, like with this study, they would go in and they would basically say what the study was or what they were doing was, well, we want everybody that's in the study, we want you to write an essay about what your personal philosophy of life is, like what your beliefs are or whatever. So they wanted everybody to write an essay about that. Now, so they turned them all in, but then what ended up happening was the people that were doing the study, they would take the essays that everybody wrote and then they would put the subjects like in a room, like they would strap you to a chair, they'd put like electrodes on you that would monitor like your physiological reactions, and then they'd like shine lights in your face and there'd be like a two-way mirror so they could watch you and everything. And then they would start like berating you and like belittling you and like making fun of your beliefs and making fun of your philosophies and your, you know what I mean? They would just kind of like take what you had written and like throw it back in your face, like in the cruelest way possible. And they would just like keep doing that, and they would just keep at you and keep at you and keep at you. And then not only that, they would do that, but then like at the next sessions, they would do that, but then they would show you recordings of the past sessions, and they would show you your own facial expressions like back at you.
That's some
so
weird
like
shit.
You could see how fucking angry you were getting and how frustrated you were getting.
That's some weird
and they
shit.
were trying to like, well, they wanted to see like, obviously, because if you do like a psychological study, you're not supposed to you have to tell them kind of that it's about something else, because otherwise it'll ruin, you know, if people know what it is you're studying, then it'll ruin the outcome or whatever. So So obviously they didn't tell them that that's what the study was about, but I think what they were studying was some kind of, they wanted to see basically how much it would take to like psychologically just like break someone down, is what they were essentially trying to test.
I wonder why they wanted to know that.
Well, like I said, a lot of people said that this might have been part of MK Ultra because they think maybe the CIA had something to do with like funding this study. Like I said, this was back in the like late 50s, early 60s. I do not think this test would be allowed nowadays because of ethical standards, but like back then, yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, they wouldn't allow you to do this study nowadays, but you know, there's a lot of psychological studies they did back in the 50s and 60s that they would not let you do, that they would not let you do nowadays because they're really, really unethical. And this definitely seems unethical because it was basically, like I said, it wasn't constant. Like you would come in, I kind of feel like it was like maybe once a week or twice a week or something like that. And you would come in like for a few hours and they would do like sessions, but it was over a long period. It was like over 3 years. Like you would come back every so often. Like they paid you for it, you know, or whatever, but they would just keep doing it. And I guess they wanted to see, and I'd actually kind of be curious to know what happened because we know what happened with Ted Kaczynski, but I'd kind of be curious to know what happened to like the other 20 odd people in the study. Like were they fucked up forever too? Or was it just Ted? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying, I know it's very, very simplistic to say, oh, this is what caused his, because obviously he had, you know, some social awkwardness and like some problems before this time. Like he was already super introverted. He'd already been bullied. He'd already had all these other things, but this clearly did not help. And this might have kind of been like the breaking point. You know what I'm saying? Like this experience that he went through.
I'm gonna put you out. Look at her face. She's like, what? Yeah, you're in trouble.
John Smith said, is Ted a supervillain? He does kind of strike me as somebody that's like a supervillain. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, apparently they did, before they even started the test, and this is another usual thing that they do with this kind of psychological testing, is that they'll do, you know, kind of like an evaluation of all the subjects like beforehand to make sure that you're not getting any like, you know, crazy people in there or anything like that. They want to make sure that everybody's fine and like emotionally stable and everything. And they said that Kaczynski seemed emotionally stable before the study started. So, you know, so it's possible that this could have been like kind of a big thing that contributed maybe to his hostility, I guess, later on. You know what I mean? But I don't think that, I mean, if it was just the study that did it, then obviously everyone that was in the study would have like freaked out and become supervillains. But I think because of the particular way that Ted was, you know, it was just kind of like a combination of factors. That's kind of what I think. So basically, Ted graduated from Harvard in 1962. And then he went to, I think he got a BA, and then he went to University of Michigan, and then he got a master's there and a doctoral degree in mathematics, and that was in 1964 and 1967. Now, he hadn't actually wanted, University of Michigan was actually not his first choice for doing his doctoral degree, but he actually applied to UC Berkeley and University of Chicago, and he actually got into both places. But he actually ended up going to UM because they offered him a teaching position and financial aid. Like he got like a big grant package. Like it was like the equivalent to like $21,000 a year. And they gave him like a job there, like a teaching post, which the other two colleges didn't offer. So he's like, okay, well, that's obviously the best deal. So that's where he went. So his whole specialty, like while he was in school, was I guess it's called like geometric function theory. Please don't ask me to explain it. I'm not really a math person. So, you know what I mean? And apparently like his professors there were like, thought he was amazing. And it's like, he even solved like some equations that like his professors like couldn't figure out and shit like that. So he was like way ahead of the curve on the stuff. You know what I mean? Now, basically, he ended up writing like a dissertation that, you know, got huge, like, all of the everybody that read it was just like, oh my god, this is like one of the coolest. He's like, even though probably only about a dozen people in the United States would probably even understand it, but you know, it's amazing anyway. So 1967 he actually won a prize like at the University of Michigan, which was like gave him the prize for like the best dissertation in mathematics that year. And he also got a National Science Foundation fellowship and actually taught for 3 years and published some articles and things like that. So, you know, he was kind of way up in academia. He would have, like I said, he would have been like Stephen Hawking or somebody like that had he continued on this course, you know, but obviously we know that that's not what happened. Now, after he graduated, he actually ended up becoming an assistant professor of mathematics at UC Berkeley, which, like I said, he had applied there and gotten in before, but he ended up graduating from UM because of various reasons. So he ended up teaching some undergraduate courses there in calculus and geometry. But he was only there for, I believe, like a year or two. Now, that's the thing, though. Everybody talked about he was brilliant, like a brilliant mind, but again, very, very socially awkward, and his students gave him like really low rankings. They said, you know, he basically comes in, he mumbles, you know, he's always like stuttering over his words. It's like when we try to go, because you know how professors and they have like, you know, office hours, like students can go in after hours and like ask him questions and stuff. And it's like we couldn't really do that. Like he would always just like not be in the office, or he would just ignore us, like if we went there. So he wasn't real comfortable in a teaching environment. And the students could kind of see that. So they gave him like really, really low ratings. So in 1969, he was only 26 years old, and he quit without really giving anyone a reason why. And, you know, they were kind of bummed out about it because they said, you know, he was very, like, all of his publications were, like, really impressive. It seemed like he was on track to be very, very high up, like a very advanced member of the faculty, but he just quit and didn't really tell anybody about why he quit. But like I said, I imagine it was probably because he wasn't real comfortable teaching because he wasn't really good with people. So 1971 in the summer, Ted moved back to his parents' house in Lombard, Illinois. And he lived there for a couple of years, just kind of like doing odd jobs and shit like that. 2 years after that, he moved into the famous cabin. Now, he had built it, Wikipedia said he built it himself, but I saw somewhere else that he built it, him and his brother had built it. Like, it was because him and his brother, like, owned this piece of land, you know what I mean? And so, in Montana, where he had built the thing on there. So basically, he just wanted to go back to nature and live, like, a simple life, like, off the grid, you know? So the cabin didn't have any electricity, it didn't have any running water. And like I said, he worked odd jobs around. His family also gave him money, which he would later use to essentially like buy shit for making bombs and stuff, which his family obviously did not know about. Now, in 1978, he actually went and worked with his dad and his brother for a little while, like at a factory that made foam rubber or something. But his brother ended up having to fire him because Ted was harassing a female supervisor who he had dated briefly. Like, they had dated, they had broken up, and then he just kept, like, fucking with her and harassing her and stuff like that. And it got so bad that eventually his brother was like, bro, you know, you can't stay here. So he told him to leave. So because Ted was like, fuck this shit, and decided he was going to go and live out in the middle of nowhere in his cabin, he wanted to become completely self-sufficient. So he started teaching himself how to track animals, how to find like edible plants, how to, you know, just build things that you would need like out in the woods. But he's basically out there for a little while, and then he starts to notice that the area around where his cabin is getting destroyed by, you know, real estate development and industrial development and things like that. And it's starting to piss him off because he wants to be like out in nature. You know what I mean? So because he was so angry at all of this industrialization of the wilderness as he saw it, he started doing, like I mentioned before, he started doing like sabotaging their shit. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, if somebody was building a road, he'd try to go and fuck it up, or, you know, something like that. Like, he wasn't hurting anybody at first. He was just trying to make enough trouble for them that they would like go away and not build roads over all his shit and whatever. But yeah, they said the one thing though that made him decide that he was going to go whole hog on the thing and start blowing people up was that he goes out for a walk one day in one of his favorite spots and then discovers that the spot had been essentially like paved over. You know what I mean? Paved paradise and put up a parking lot, as they say in the song. He went out on a walk and saw that, and that was like the last straw, the straw that broke the camel's back. He's like, well, okay, I'm gonna fucking fuck some shit up now. So after that, he starts getting into manifesto mode. Let's call it that. So he starts reading. I mean, he spent a lot of time at like the local library, reading pretty much everything, sociology, political philosophy, stuff like that. He was real into a guy named Jacques Ellul, I guess is how you pronounce his last name, who was a Christian anarchist. And he also kind of like got real into doing sabotage and shit like that. And basically he came to the conclusion, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, that, well, the only way to fight back against industrial civilization is with violence. He didn't think that it was possible that anything could be reformed at this stage. And he said basically what he was saying was that we have to like just burn it all down. That's what he was saying. Like it has to be like a violent collapse. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to like come back and be like happy people again. Because his whole thing, like I said, he was kind of like a neo-Luddite, what they would call. His whole thing was that he thought that the advent of technology was making people screwed up and unhappier because they were essentially getting farther and farther away from like a state of nature or from the way that people used to live like back in caveman days. He thought that people would be happier living like they evolved to, without any of the modern technological things, because he just thought that was making things more complicated, and it was making people unhappy, and it was making people do things that were useless or were not goal directed. You know, like I feel like that's kind of what he was getting at. Whoops.
Ma'am.
Oh, I'm just having like
Okay.
shit like popping up
All right.
in my face, and I can't like really see what's going on.
Having shit pop up in your face. That sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
Having shit pop up in your face. It's emails.
Okay, all right.
It's
I was
emails.
thinking sexual.
Well, of course, you're always thinking that.
Shit popping up in your face.
John Smith said, so is Ted the Lorax? A little bit. I kind of feel like maybe he read that as a kid. It's just kind of like, but yeah, so like I said, I kind of feel like this is where the intelligence started shading over into, and you have to think this is way before the advent of the internet. This is when he was writing this stuff, this was like the 70s, right? Like the late 70s. And he starts getting just into, you know, I don't know. I just kind of feel like he got into a thing where it's like, oh, nowadays it's like there's too much technology, and it's screwing people up. We're not supposed to live like this, and everybody would be happier. Like society would work better if we didn't have all this other stuff going on. Which, like I said, I don't really agree with that. Like I see where he was coming from. Like some of the shit that he says. What?
I was going to say, pre-industrial societies did not work well at all. They just didn't. All you got to do is just look at the Maya.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like, have you... I
The
kind of feel
American
like...
Indians, their shit didn't work too well. They burned down whole fucking forests.
And then they were like, oh, whoops,
Yeah,
the trees are
how'd
gone.
that go? Yeah, where'd it go?
Yeah, look at Easter Island. Look
Yeah.
what happened there. But that's what I mean. It's like... I feel like he had like a big blind spot.
Yeah.
In that area. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying, oh, always like technological progress is always good. Obviously it's not. Or technological innovation is always good. There's always a dark side and a light side to everything. Like sometimes, you know, the shit is good, but sometimes it's, you know, there's bad shit too, like I said. But
really only industrial civilizations have a concept of conservation.
Right.
And ecology. Like in Rome had no concept of that. They'd go into Africa and kill every fucking lion they found.
Yeah, it didn't even occur to them.
Yeah,
it
it didn't even
seemed
occur to them.
like.
They just sent them all to the damn arena because they were worth money. They fucking were lucky to have lions because we're lucky that the Romans didn't have them all wiped out in the fucking arena.
Yeah, it's almost like it was something that didn't occur to them. They
Yeah.
were just kind of like, oh, well, they're there, so we just got to use them. It's like
Yeah.
it never really occurred to them that there wouldn't be
just
anymore, or
spring
that
up
there
out
was
of the earth.
there was a finite number.
Yeah, they just didn't think like that.
Yeah.
No concept of it.
So in that way, it's like I kind of feel like even though some people might say, Ted Kaczynski, he was almost like an environmentalist. Not really. I just kind of feel like it was a different. He was coming at it from a different thing. Yeah, he didn't like it that nature was being industrialized or paved over, which like a lot of people don't like that. But I don't know if he was. I don't know if he really thought through like what that would entail, like everyone going back and living like that. Like now that the world is like so much more populous, I don't know how that would work out.
It couldn't work out.
That's what I'm saying.
You have to have industrial technology to
sustain this kind of
this population. You have to have power, and power production is what produces fertilizer and food production. Without power, you couldn't produce the food that you have now. Without that food, within 2 years, the population would collapse. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
that's why it's these people talking about trying to get rid of fossil fuels. They're fucking tripping. They're tripping because that's where, first of all, production of fossil fuels where fertilizer comes from. And that fertilizer is what helps us fucking have these fucking high population numbers. And then all the farm equipment is fucking gasoline and fucking diesel powered. You couldn't do it by hand or horses. You could, but it would. Your production rates would go way down. What you're talking about is fucking starving out millions and millions of people on the planet if you get rid of what they're calling fossil fuel. I'm not convinced that it has anything to do with fossils. There's a lot of scientists that say, wait, shit. There's fucking hydrocarbons on fucking the surface of Titan that's fucking oil. There's never been any life on Titan. Pressure, heat, hydrogen, and carbon makes hydrocarbons. You know, I think it's everywhere. Every planets have it, or most planets have it. There's soot and hydrogen fucking near the core of the planet making oil. That's all it is. You don't even need life to have it. But it's a common fucking thing in planets.
But what I'm saying is that I think any extreme like this is always going to like get you into trouble because it's like, you know, I'm not saying that unregulated, like unmitigated, like technological advance, that's not good either because that can cause pollution. That can cause like other unintended consequences maybe. But going back before we had any of that, that's not going to solve anything either. You know what I mean? I just kind of feel like you have to just keep trying to strike a balance.
Yeah, anybody who's fucking talking about going backwards in time when it comes to technology, talking about these are Malthusians, people that believed in Malthus, and Malthus was a fucking old writer, and he believed that the planet could only fucking hold 1 million people. If there's any more than that, they'd all die, or a couple million people. I don't remember exactly what he said. Every time some pseudo-intellectual or scientist of their era comes up with a number, a carrying number for the planet, it's always proven wrong because he's not factoring. Malthus didn't factor in modern fucking agricultural technology. He didn't know anything about that. No,
yeah, which I mean, it wasn't his fault because it's like it wasn't. But yeah,
the paradigms change.
Right.
The paradigms change.
That's why I don't worry too much about, and that's another reason too, and I've said this on other shows, that I don't really like to make predictions about like what'll happen in the future. Oh, it's gonna go like this, or it's nobody knows. It's like nobody knows. I mean, some people might get it right by accident, but nobody knows because there's too many factors.
In general, scientists always get the future wrong. Always. Just look at backwards in time and look at what they're saying is going to be around 50 years from now. Like you go back to the fucking early 1900s and see what they're saying is going to be around in the 1950s. And they're going to say, it's fucking crazy shit. Zeppelins with wings is going to be around in the 1950s. Powered by horses. You know, they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about.
Well, like I said, they were products of their time.
Yeah,
like they only had, I mean, people only have so like limited imagination, right? And so you can only imagine things essentially like within the parameters of what your time is, what's possible in your time, and maybe a little bit outside of that, but not much farther outside.
And then you have some people that get arrogant. Well, this is the modern era. We can predict what will happen. No, you can't. When I was a kid, there was no way of foreseeing the internet and what the internet would do to the economy. There was no way.
Well, and that's what, and the thing about it too, it's like, it's interesting if you even go back, I mean, even something dumb, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's not dumb, but I mean, something that's as seemingly trivial, maybe that's what I meant to say, about, what was that show that we were watching, like the food that made America or whatever? like, it's don't yell at her because that's a lot more.
She's fucking being crazy. Stop.
I know, but she'll get bored. Like if you know.
Okay,
maybe.
she's gone now. No, she's ready.
No, she's behind you.
All right.
Just let her pull him out. It's
All
fine.
right. She's yelling too much.
I know, but
What is it you want?
can you guys hear her? It's like so funny. She's like, yeah.
Now she's up here on the desk.
Oh, she's like, well, now I'm gonna eat your camera and I'm gonna
Yeah.
lick your keyboard and all this other stuff. But even that, like that food that made America or whatever, it's amazing how much like stupid little details, stupid little contingencies like change the course of entire industries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, oh, this guy didn't file the right patent at the right time, so this other guy came in and this whole other thing happened that wouldn't have happened had this guy's shit not like fallen behind the desk or some shit like that. So it's like always just little unpredictable shit like that, and that could, it seems like nothing, but it's like a butterfly effect, and it just alters the course of history, and there's no way you can predict every little tiny thing like that.
No, and here's another thing. People know that television came out in the 50s. It almost came out in the 30s, though, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand. They fucking basically could have.
Yeah, there was a show about that.
Yeah.
We watched it the other day.
Yeah. It almost came out in the 30s, but World War II happened, which prevented it.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to do it until the war was over. So then
yeah. See, I
television came out.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, they had it in the 30s.
Yeah, they were working on it. They had it. It was working. Like it wasn't great. Like it was very primitive.
But the
worked.
market wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because everybody was at war, so they said, we'll wait.
Yeah, I think like as soon as they kind of got, they're like, woohoo, we got it to work, and then like war broke out, and they're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
And then like it just went under like for a couple decades.
Until the war was over.
Yeah, because they were, people had other priorities.
Yep.
But see, that's what I mean.
The world would have been very different had it come out in the 30s.
Right. That's like something you never could have predicted. And yeah, like I said, that's why I think people are so fascinated by fiction that's like alternate history and things like that, because sometimes it's just like a tiny, tiny little detail like that, and it just kind of like changes everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like had this one little tiny thing not happened, like things would have gone off in a completely different direction. So there's just too much of that. The world, especially nowadays, is way too complex. So I don't think anyone can reliably predict. Maybe you can like 5 years down the road, maybe. But any farther than that, I don't know. You know what I mean? You might be able to get in the ballpark, but I don't know if you're going to get like real exact. Because there's just too many factors. There's just too many. Slasher Fred said, I think one of those first television children's programs was the Howdy Doody show. Yeah, when did that first come on?
50s.
That was like, I'm pretty sure that was the 50s.
But no, they had television in the 30s. It's just that they couldn't bring it to market. I think it was Westinghouse, was it?
Yeah, it was wasn't it? Yeah, I think it might have been.
They had it, and they knew how to do it. They had a couple of prototypes. And they were going to take it to market, but then the war broke out, and they says, well, we got to make war material, and there's not going to be a market for television. We'll do it after the war.
Well, and a shitty thing, too, that happens a lot is that, and I think this might have happened on either the TV show or one of the other ones, is that somebody, like, invents something, and it's super cool and kicks ass, but it doesn't catch on for whatever reason, and then, like, somebody else with more money and more, like, maybe social cachet like finds out about it and it's like, ooh, I'm gonna steal that idea. And so then they steal it and then they popularize it and then they fuck over the guy that actually invented the thing. Like that happens a lot too.
Yeah.
So, and there was one show like that really like made me angry because the guy that actually invented the shit, he kind of like died in penury, I guess. And like the guy that just kind of like stole his idea was like rich and famous. So, Defcon says, my favorite nut, Freedom Club forever. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll get into that. Victor says, hey, I made it. Yeah, we're only just now getting to the bombing. Like before we were getting into Ted's kind of background, in mathematics, his college and stuff like that, and a little bit of his philosophy and
Zach's talking about beauty standards and their changes over time. I don't think beauty standards have changed that much since the very early 1900s or late 1800s. If you look at photographs of people in the early 1900s, almost everybody you consider them to be kind of like all those facets, you consider them to be acceptable. They would be pretty. They're not in style, but they're pretty. Some of the stuff before that, not really that pretty. So I don't think it changed that much, especially by the 1920s. If you looked at 1920s movie star women, they would fly today. They'd be, the hair and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it, and I don't even know if that's just because nowadays you can kind of wear whatever, and people are just like, oh, okay, I suppose so. But, yeah, you could totally wear, like, some 1920s shit, and people would be like, yeah, epic.
They'd like it, yeah. So, I don't think beauty standards have changed. They haven't changed, really, I don't think. It's just...
they do, but...
It's just the expression
minor,
of style.
I guess.
The expression of style.
Yeah.
But even, like, Big Fine and shit like that, they had all that. It's just that that's not what they were. They weren't promoting it the same way. Leading ladies were always somebody who was like in their late teens, early 20s, and they tended to be skinny. But then you had fucking Mae West. Mae West would be considered kind of like fucking thick for a time. She was a sex symbol.
Or
too.
later on, like Jane Mansfield.
Yeah. So they had all that.
Who was definitely a big fan.
Yeah, and they didn't. I wouldn't say they weren't into fucking bootylicious yet, but they were getting close.
I kind of feel like bootylicious women back then were more like the magazines that you bought from underneath the counter.
Yeah.
Like more than like
Guys
mainstream movie
liked
stars.
Yeah.
Like shit you weren't allowed to buy.
Yeah. Blue films and fucking...
Right, like, stag movies.
that were shit that was traded between guys because porn was illegal, basically. So it was kind of an underground... It had photography clubs is what they called them. But they liked... If you looked at what they were photographing, they liked the same... They liked the same kind of women. Guys liked the same kind of women back then that they like now. And just look at men's porn. You know what I mean? And it's just thick. They like thick. Or, some dudes like skinny women too, but it's mostly
it's kind of.
curves.
I mean, it's kind of all over the map.
Depends
but
on what Guys like novelty. Whatever stands out, they'll like it if it looks good. And no, a lot of fucking old vintage porn. Especially by the time the 50s were rolled around, they were into the bombshell look. Big boobs, tits and ass. Russ Meyer's looking. That's what they were into. If you looked at the girls he was into, they liked that. The strippers were like that. The popular ones.
Ben says, one of my favorite philosophers. Sorry, I just found the stream and I have to run out to the dentist in 10 minutes. I finally became a patron, though. Master of Dungeons. So Ben is Master of Dungeons. The mystery is solved. Thank you very much. You are actually our first patron in quite a long time.
Yeah, we don't grow that fast.
That's okay. Slow and steady wins the race, as they say.
Yep.
Richard Brown says, Betty Page.
Yeah.
I love Betty Page.
She was medium build, though.
Yeah, she wasn't skinny, but she wasn't big fine either.
No, she was
medium build. But
she's drawn inaccurately a lot. If you see Betty
the cartoons of her don't. If you see actual Betty Page, she's not quite as voluptuous as she's portrayed in the cartoons. But she's still hot though. I always liked her. I thought she was really pretty. Let's see. Amanda says, I would wear some clothing styles from the 80s. Yeah, some of them were good. Some of them look like crap. But
some of it was shit, yes.
I could do without those massive fucking shoulder pads, that's for sure. And everything being like triangular.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to look like a fucking triangle up here and then a triangle down there with like the pants like that. So you look like two triangles on top.
Yeah, pink checkerboard fucking triangle earrings and shit like that. No. There was shit 80s and good 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, some shit about the 80s I liked, but a lot of 80s stuff I thought was ugly. I actually even thought it was ugly back then.
Yeah, it was tacky.
But, you know what I mean?
Tacky and cheap looking, a lot of it.
Let's see. Zach says, Betty Page kind of looks like people these days. She has a very modern looking face compared to, say, Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, I guess she kind of does. I always liked Betty Page because she just looked like, and I think the reason that she appealed to so many people was she was beautiful, but she was like regular looking. She looked like approachable, I guess.
When you go through photographs, people look the same throughout fucking centuries. You can go back to Roman stuff. Roman statues, people still pretty much look the same. What changed was what was promoted. The looks that Hollywood promoted, or the looks that certain styles promoted, changed. But if you probably looked at the population, they looked about the same. All the same features.
Yeah, I think that maybe the reason that we're thinking people look different back then was mostly because of the clothes and the hairstyles and stuff, because that makes a huge difference.
And what they were going to show you.
Yeah, that too.
Who they would present.
That too.
All I gotta do is look at some old movies whenever they showed like African American women. They only showed a certain kind of African American woman. She had straight hair for the most part. She looked like a dark-skinned white woman. That's usually what they showed. Attractive, but that didn't fucking represent the average black woman in the United States at that time.
Yeah, that's not what most of them looked like.
No, it's not most of them looked like. That was just the ones that they showed you. Well, it was the same way with the white women. They were just showing you the models. You know what I mean? The ones that they wanted you to see, the ones that they were promoting as that this is beautiful. This is what beauty is. That's what they were showing.
Which, like I said, it's kind of a bummer. I kind of feel like the standards were a lot more rigid back then.
Yeah.
Because they were just kind of like, well, you have to look like this, and they only gave you like a little handful of options.
Yeah.
And most people don't look like that, and if you didn't, you were kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah, exactly. You had to be within this or you weren't. But
Right.
you know what? Most developing societies are like that. China's like that right now. There's a certain look that China likes. If you're not in that look, you're not a good-looking woman. You're not a good-looking Chinese woman, which is funny. They had a Chinese model fucking who has a very unique look. I think she looked. Remember that one we were looking at that they showed? They did a little fucking show about her. China was rejecting her. They didn't like her. They thought she was insulting the Chinese people. But she's popular here in the West because she has just a unique look, and the Chinese don't like her, you know. And but it's like that. Developing nations, and the United States was still a developing nation at that time. Even though it was like one of the better countries in the world at that time, in the 20s, it was still like a developing nation. If you went back there today, you'd be like, man, this place is backwards. That's what you would think. Because it was backwards in time, you know.
Mango says, I've got some old movies of Betty Page in. I do too. I have a DVD with a bunch of old stuff, like a kind of, what do you call it, like a burlesque type of thing, which she was in. Zach says, I think the most gorgeous woman on earth at the moment is Lupita Nyong'o. Yeah, she is actually really beautiful.
I don't even know who that is.
You probably know if you saw her. There was a great biopic made about Betty Page a few years back worth watching. Yeah, I think that was the one,
I remember.
The Notorious Betty Page, was that? Yeah, that was actually really good. I think I saw that in the theater. American Military 100 said, Unabomber, yes, was waiting eons for 13 o'clock to get around to this dude.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we didn't do it because I thought we'd already done it, but then I was like, oh, I guess we didn't.
Let's get back to the case, actually.
All right. Oh, wait, Victor says, Japanese women are shaving their chin bones for the triangular face look.
Ridiculous.
So, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Gotta suffer for beauty,
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, you don't gotta do, but some people want to. I don't know. All right, so we're only just now, like I said, we were covering like his background, a little bit of his philosophy. We'll get into more of that later on because it kind of, I don't know if it evolved over time, but it kind of, people found out more about it later on. So basically, Ted's activities started coming to the attention of the FBI in 1978, which was when his first mail bomb was exploded. So like I said, over the next, I believe it was 17, 18 years, he actually mailed, or sometimes he hand delivered the shit too, you know, the bombs, and they got like better, I guess, like better at blowing up, like, you know, over time. And like I said, eventually would kill 3 people and injure 23, 24 people.
You gonna get into what he used?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about that in a minute.
All right.
So the first bomb that he sent was a mail bomb, and he sent it in spring of 1978 to a guy named Buckley Christ at Northwestern University. He was a materials engineering professor. Now, the package was actually found in a parking lot at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And the thing about it, I don't know like who the, you know, sending address was to, but the return address was Buckley Christ. So it was kind of like it was returned to him. And so somebody found it like out in the parking lot and said, oh, is this yours? And he's like, I didn't send that. And so he thought it was suspicious because it wasn't his own handwriting. Like, I would think that was weird too. So he basically like called the campus police and the security guard. And so the security guard came and the security guard opened the package and it blew up.
Damn.
Now, you know, the bomb was actually, this was the first one that he had made and that he had mailed out, and it wasn't great, thankfully. So it did blow up, and the campus policeman, whose name was Terry Marker, he was injured, but he wasn't that badly hurt. He just had like kind of minimal injuries, like his hands were kind of, his left hand was kind of fucked up. So the bomb, the first one that he made, it was kind of like, it was metal from a home workshop. and it was like a piece of metal pipe, like about 9 inches long and 1 inch in diameter, with smokeless explosive powder in it. Now, the reason why it didn't explode probably as big as Ted wanted was that the box and the plugs that sealed the ends of the pipe were handcrafted wood. Now, I'm not suggesting that anybody builds. It's the internet. You can find out how to build a pipe bomb if you want to. But I'm just saying, I'm not telling anybody to build a pipe bomb. Most people know. But pipe bombs, usually they have like metal caps on the end because you want constrained, pressure. But because the wood is on the ends, like, it didn't contain the shit, so it didn't blow up as big as it should have. So basically, what happened? I think that the trigger device that he used was just like he used a nail with like a rubber band, like keeping it kind of tensioned, and then the nail was supposed to kind of go off and like hit some match heads. Yeah. He had like 6 match heads in there.
Yeah.
But the nail only hit like 3 of them, so it didn't really get, you know what I mean? And like I said, so the caps were wood, so it just kind of like, wood's a little bit more porous than metal, so it didn't work out as good. Like I said, thankfully. So it only hurt the guy's hand. He wasn't hurt that bad. So that's it. So later on, Ted would figure out, unfortunately, that he would use like batteries and a heat filament wire that would explode the shit better.
He got the battery out of the damn flexible Instamatic camera film. When you have the old Polaroid cameras and had the film that came out, the bottom of that thing is a battery. So he would cut that out, and that's where the battery was. And the filament that he got was from the flash cube. Out of a Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing.
Ben said, people don't realize how common bombings and letter bombings were in the 70s. Yeah, there was like a lot of like fucking bombs put on planes and like mail bombings and shit like that. I mean, the 70s was a rough time. It was a rough time. Late 60s and 70s, there was a lot of terrorism.
Letter bombers don't want to get caught.
Yeah.
That's their main thing. They don't want to get caught. That's why they do that. Mass shooters and shit like that, they don't care if they get caught. It's a fucking suicide attack.
Yeah, it's a completely different psychological profile.
Yeah, right. The whole reason why there's fucking bombs and letter bombs and mail bombs and shit like that, and bomb set, is because the dude's does not want to get caught. He's scared of getting caught, which is kind of funny, but that's his primary fucking mentality. Don't catch me.
You know who Ted Kaczynski reminds me of a little bit? Whoever it was that did the Tylenol poisonings. Yeah, that you remember that? We did a show about that a while back. I kind of feel I don't think they ever caught that person, but I mean, they caught a person that said they were him, but that wasn't him.
I don't think it was him.
No, but the guy that said it was him was just doing it like to get money, like for blackmail.
Yeah.
And they got him for that, but they didn't think he did the
certain kind
poisoning.
of offender doesn't want to get caught. Scared.
Well, and I kind of feel like I don't know, like this just occurred to me, but I think that the similarities are that usually you get somebody like Ted Kaczynski or like the person that did the Tylenol poisonings. I kind of feel like it's a person that feels superior in some ways, like, and they maybe get off on having this kind of godlike power where they can just choose somebody at random, and it's like, I can just send you a bomb through the mail, or I can just like put some poison in your Tylenol and you'll just pick it up off the shelf. I think they get off on that idea of being in that position, like being in a superior position and just being able to like off somebody randomly and like you can't do anything about it. Like I kind of feel like it's the same kind of psychology. And like I said, as far as I know, we did a show about the Tylenol poisonings not too long ago, but as far as I know, they haven't caught that person that did that. That was in Chicago area too, weirdly. But yeah, so later on he sent some bombs to some officials for different airlines, and then this is when the FBI got involved, actually in 1979, not 1978 like I said before, but 1979 he actually got a bomb placed in the cargo hold of American Airlines Flight 444, which was flying from Chicago to Washington, D.C. Now, the bomb got in there. It was in the cargo hold. Thankfully, again, it didn't go off to its full capacity. It started smoking, at which point the pilot was alerted to the smoke in the cargo hold and did an emergency landing. So thankfully, nobody was hurt. They did have to treat some passengers for smoke inhalation, but that was like the worst of it. Basically, it had like the timing mechanism on it was not working correctly. And thankfully, like I said, because if it had been working correctly, it would have blown the entire plane up. So I'm not sure how many passengers were on the plane, but too many. So yeah, thankfully nobody was hurt in that instance, but he was planning on blowing up a plane, which not fucking cool, Ted, seriously. So obviously bombing an airliner is not a good thing. That's a federal crime. So the FBI got into it, and that was when they started calling him Unabomb. Like I said, UNABOM, like acronym, University and Airline Bomber. They also came in with like the U.S. Postal Inspectors. They also became involved as well. They had been the ones that had been working it prior to this, so they were working together with the FBI. Actually, the Postal Inspectors had been calling him the Junkyard Bomber because the stuff that he used to make the bombs, very specifically, he would use stuff that you could just get anywhere, like, you know, because he didn't want to get caught. You don't want anything that's like gonna stick out, or like, you know, it's just stuff that you can find at hardware stores and shit like that. So 1979, they put together a FBI-led task force. You had the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, like I said, you had the ATF, and they all got together and started like investigating the case. And eventually, it would be like 150 people were working on this, like at one time, like I said, because it went on for a really long time. They didn't catch this guy for like 17 years, and they started doing like forensic examination on all the parts of the bombs. They started kind of like everybody that had been targeted, including everybody that had been on the plane and all the people that got the mail bombs so far. They looked into their background. Is there any possible, like, why is this person targeted? Is there some possible? So they were like combing through every single detail, looking for a way to like catch this motherfucker. But they said it was like really, really hard because, like I said, the stuff that he was making the bombs out of was just regular shit. It was just stuff that you could get anywhere, like in any hardware store in America, and nothing about it was distinctive. You know what I mean? So that was really stymieing their investigation. And as I mentioned, the victims, which they looked into their pasts and everything, but they said that the victims were not necessarily chosen for any specific reason. They were just kind of, the guy would just, like I said, Ted would just go to the library and he'd be like, well, I'm maybe pissed off at this industry, like an airline or something like that. And then he would just go through like, lists at the library and like pick a name, and he would just like send shit there. You know what I mean? So he wasn't picking people specifically, really. He was just kind of like picking people sort of at random that sort of kind of had something to do with something he was mad at. So, which again,
periphery guys,
right?
Yeah.
It's just, people that are like didn't know him, and he didn't target anybody he knew or that he had once associated with. Now he did like send some bombs later to some people at like Berkeley and stuff like that, but and a couple ones that he sent to people that, but I don't know if he like knew them or if it was like, because he did say later that some of the stuff was revenge, so maybe he did know some people and they pissed him off. I don't know, but like generally most of the people he sent him to, I don't think he knew them personally. He just kind of picked him out of a book. So 1980, you got the FBI chief agent John Douglas, and they put together a psychological profile of the bomber. And like I said, this is many years before they caught him. And this is funny because they actually kind of nailed it at first. They said, this is a man with above average intelligence with connections to academia. Check. They also said that he would be a neo-Luddite. Big check. Who had an academic degree in the hard sciences. Again, hard, another check. But they decided in 1983 that, no, that's probably not right. Like, other FBI analysts came in and said, no, we don't think that's correct. We think that this guy is maybe a blue-collar guy who worked for the airlines, and the airlines were pissing him off specifically.
Say low
like he
ball.
was a mechanic or something. But I was
lowball.
like, no, you should have gone with the first thing. You were exactly right.
Yep.
But they didn't know. They didn't know back then. I mean, it could have been, because like I said, sometimes, like some of these bombing campaigns, like sometimes it is dudes that, you know, worked for a company and they had a specific like grudge against this company because the company fucked them over somehow. And it's just like, oh, I'm going to bomb people at this company, but then I'm going to like bomb other random people too. So it's like to throw the, you know, throw suspicion off me.
Yeah.
So I have heard of that happening. So it's not crazy like to think that, but it's just funny how on the nose they were at first. But then, like, later they came in and said, no, we don't think that's right. I'm like, no, that was right. But, you know, hindsight's 20/20. What are you going to do? So basically, so they set up a hotline, and they offered, like, $1 million reward, like, for anyone that could come up with any information that would lead to his capture, right? Now, so prior to this, like I said, you'd had mail bombs that had just given like minor injuries, because most of the time they blew up and, you know, no one was around, or they blew up and it just like hurt someone's hand or something like that. No one was horribly seriously injured. But the first serious injury happened in 1985. There was a guy named John Hauser. He was actually a graduate student, and he was also in the Air Force. He was a captain. He was mailed a bomb, and he actually it blew up, and he lost 4 of his fingers.
Damn.
And the vision in one eye. So this was a bomb that was handcrafted with wooden parts. So, and I don't know why he targeted that person specifically. So I don't know why. Like I said, he was just picking random people. Now, the first person that was killed by one of Ted Kaczynski's bombs was a man named Hugh Scruton, and he owned a computer store in California. He was 38 years old. This was also in 1985, and he was actually killed. The bomb was like a nail and splinter loaded bomb, and it was just put like in a package in the parking lot of his store. And, you know, he just found it in the parking lot, and I don't even think he opened it. I think he was just picking it up to move it, and it blew up, and it killed him. There was another attack against another computer store owner, and that happened in Salt Lake City, Utah, and that was in February of 1987. Now, this bomb, he actually, disguised it as, a piece of lumber and left it out in the parking lot. And either the owner or a guy that worked at the computer store, his name was Gary Wright, he tried to move it out of the parking lot and it exploded. Now, he wasn't killed, but it severed a bunch of nerves in his left arm and put a bunch, his body was full of shrapnel. They said it was 200 pieces of shrapnel, going into his body. Now, for about 6 years, there weren't any more attacks. Not really sure what was going on in Ted's life at that point, but there was a 6-year hiatus. So Ted comes out of retirement, I guess, and strikes again in 1993. And he mails a bomb to a guy named David Gelernter, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I apologize if that's not right. He was a computer science professor at Yale, which, like I said, again, Yale, he didn't go there, but whatever. Now, David Gelernter was hurt, but, he was hurt bad, but he did actually, eventually recover, so he didn't die. The same weekend, Ted mailed another bomb to the house of a geneticist named Charles Epstein from the University of California, San Francisco. He opened the package, and it blew off several of his fingers. And after that, Ted Kaczynski, this might have been one of the few times that he did this. He actually then called the brother of David Gelernter, the first guy that he had sent the bomb to. And the guy's brother was a behavioral geneticist, and he called him and said, "You're next." But as far as I know, I don't know if he ever sent him a bomb, but he did send him a bunch of threatening letters, a couple of years after that, but I don't think he ever sent him a bomb. Now, at this point, and like I said, he's been doing this for a while, but it was the 1990s before he started, writing to the media and, taking credit for the shit. So he writes to the New York Times, and he says that his group, which he calls the FC, or the Freedom Club, was responsible for all of these attacks. So then, in 1994, there's a guy named Thomas Mosser. Now, he was an executive at a company called Burstyn Marsteller, And he was sent a mail bomb that was sent to him at his house in North Caldwell, New Jersey. And it went off and he was killed. And also after this, Kaczynski sent another letter to the New York Times and said that the FC, his little club or whatever that he made up, quote, blew up Thomas Mosser because Burstyn Marsteller, the company, helped Exxon clean up its public image after the Exxon Valdez incident. And also because, quote, its business is the development of techniques for manipulating people's attitudes. That's what he said, like in the letter that he sent.
Propaganda.
And that was why he blew the guy up.
Okay.
1995, he killed his third victim, a guy named Gilbert Murray, who was actually president of a timber industry lobbying group, the California Forestry Association. And this was actually, I don't know if it was intended for him, because the mail bomb that killed him was actually addressed to the previous president of the thing. So I guess he was just like, whoever the president is, he was going to blow him up, or, you know. But the previous president had retired, so the next guy got the bomb and he got killed, unfortunately. So in all, we have 16 bombs, and this ended up injuring 23 people and killing 3 people. And these were the ones that were all attributed to Ted Kaczynski. Now, the devices, as we said, started out very, very primitive with like the nail and the match heads and everything like that, but eventually like evolved into being more sophisticated. All of them, though, except for the first few that he did that he was still apparently experimenting with, all of them had the initials FC somewhere. Like inside the bombs, he would put like a piece in there that had the inscription FC on it, like I said, for Freedom Club. So he put that in there as like a signature. Interestingly, they said that there was some latent fingerprints on some of the devices that didn't match the fingerprints that were found on some of Kaczynski's letters, which led some people to speculate that he wasn't working alone, although everyone's pretty sure that probably he was, but I'm not real sure, like... I mean, that's the thing, though. There could have been, like, lots of other explanations for that, like why there were other fingerprints on there. Who knows? Maybe it could have been the person at the hardware store. I don't know. So another thing that Ted did a lot was he would plant, like, false clues in all the bombs. So he, like I said, he would always put, like, a little metal plate that had FC on it, like, stamped on it, hidden somewhere, usually in the pipe or the cap or whatever. And one kind of little fake clue that he left, in one bomb that didn't detonate, he put a little note in there that said, "Woo, it works. I told you it would." And then he put like the initials RV after it, like it was a note like to somebody or something like that. He's like trying to throw people off, you know what I mean? He also would use like really distinctive stamps, like to send the stuff, like to throw people off, stuff like that. They said one of his bombs was sent inside a copy of a novel called Ice Brothers by Sloan Wilson. So, but he was always like just picking random shit like that because he thought it would send the FBI like down the wrong trail. The FBI also noticed that Ted had a recurring theme of like nature, trees, and wood in his crimes. Like I said earlier, like inside his bombs, he would often put like bark and like little pieces of tree branches and shit like that. And some of the people that he targeted that he didn't really know personally had Wood or something like that in their names. Like one of the guys that he sent it was to was named Percy Wood. One was named Leroy Wood Bearson and Thomas Mosser. You know what I mean? So he picked like people with names like that, which like I said was kind of more him just targeting that like to send a message rather than that person like specifically pissing him off. You know what I mean?
Weird.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he was just getting loonier and loonier out there, I kind of feel like. So 1995, Ted mails a whole bunch of letters, including some to people that he had sent bombs to previously, and others to several, newspapers and other major media outlets. And he's basically like outlining his goals, like what he's hoping to achieve, and demanding that his essay, his Industrial Society and Its Future, that's what it was called. That's the real name of the Unabomber Manifesto. It's actually called Industrial Society and Its Future, which was 50 odd pages, and 35,000 words, he actually demanded that had to be printed verbatim in a major newspaper, or he was going to bomb more people. So this Unabomber Manifesto, which a lot of people have read, you can find it very easily online. You can even listen to the audiobook if that's your bag. Pretty much calling for a worldwide revolution against the effects of modern society's industrial technological system. So he sends this to a bunch of media outlets, and as is usual in these kind of cases, they had the same kind of thing when the Zodiac sent this kind of shit. They're like, should we print it? Because it's it seems like, because you don't want to do what a terrorist asks you to do. But on the other hand, it's you don't want people's blood on your hands if you don't publish it and he actually goes through with the threat and blows some innocent people up. You know what I'm saying? So basically they were like, okay, well, we're going to print it because we don't want anybody to get blown up. And they're like, and plus, if we print it, because it's so long and it's so detailed and the way that it's written is so specific, we're kind of hoping that someone will read it and recognize who this motherfucker is, by the way that it's written. Which, as it turned out, that's what happened. So it's probably a good thing that they published it. So the New York Times did publish it, and the Washington Post also published the whole thing. They published it in a little pamphlet that came with the paper. Also, Bob Guccione from Penthouse.
Yeah, I thought Penthouse did it.
He volunteered to publish it, but Ted Kaczynski didn't want Penthouse to publish it because he thought it wasn't respectable.
Okay.
So.
All right.
He said, I think that Ted said that if Penthouse published it, that he would, quote, reserve the right to plant one and only one bomb intended to kill after our manuscript has been published.
Okay.
So he was doing a compromise. Well, if only Penthouse will publish it, I'll only blow up one person.
Right.
Instead of I'm like, okay, this dude's a nut. So basically, I mean, okay. Now, okay. So he had typed this whole fucking thing on a typewriter that didn't have any italics or anything like that. It was an old school typewriter. So when he wanted to emphasize something, it would be in all caps and everything like that. Now he always refers to himself as FC, Freedom Club, or we, although they don't think that he had any, they think that he acted alone. Basically, it's just kind of this is actually one of the first cases. And I think there's a documentary about this on Netflix, and I still need to watch it because it's probably really interesting. But this is one of the first cases where linguistic forensics was a big factor in catching the guy. Because like I said, his style of writing was so specific, and the way that he used certain phrases and shit like that, because they had a lot of linguistics experts come in and analyze, and that was one of the things that helped him catch him. So basically what the manifesto starts with is Ted says the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. He's basically talking about coming in and shitting on leftists, scientists, living within an industrial technological system which causes horrible psychological consequences, taking away people's autonomy and freedom, diminishing their rapport with nature, forcing them to behave in ways that are increasingly remote from the natural pattern of human behavior. So
including school.
So he's basically, he was against anything that was I mean,
I kind of agreed with him on that.
He wanted a revolution against technology.
He said boys should not be in a school, anywhere near a school during puberty. That's probably true. As soon as they start going through that, they need to be out fucking doing sports and fucking doing physical stuff. And then once it's over, you can bring them back. He said when they're in their late teens, you can bring them back and continue their education. I think there might be something to that.
Once they can sit down.
Once you can sit down
behave,
and think, yeah.
Other than running around
running around like a fucking walking hard on. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Stradecki said some FBI profilers took credit for catching him with a linguistic profile. Bullshit. His brother read the manifesto and found similar language in his letters. Yeah, I brought that up earlier, and I'm going to talk about that later. Yeah, it was actually kind of I think like
his brother recognized it.
Well, I think his sister-in-law recognized it first and went to the brother and said, "Hey, this sounds like Ted," even though she'd never met him, but she'd read like some of his letters. And I think the brother, like David is the brother's name, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't want that to be Ted." But he went in the garage or whatever and like found some of Ted's old letters, and then he was starting to read it, and he was like, "Oh shit, maybe it is him." You know what I mean? So I think that's what happened. Let's see. So basically I'm just like reading a couple little things like out of the thing. I'm not, you can go read the whole thing if you want to, but he's basically saying, he calls people over-socialized. He says, the moral code of our society is so demanding that no one can think, feel, and act in a completely moral way. Some people are so highly socialized that the attempt to think, feel, and act morally imposes a severe burden on them. In order to avoid feelings of guilt, they continually have to deceive themselves about their own motives and find moral explanations for feelings and actions that in reality have a non-moral origin. We use the term over-socialized to describe such people. The thing about it, though, I kind of got, like, reading through some of his stuff, the impression that I got of Ted Kaczynski was that he's one of those people that takes his own personality and projects it outward onto other people where maybe it doesn't apply. I mean, some of the stuff that he's saying, I'm like, yeah, you feel like that, but not everybody feels like that. But he's generalizing like everyone else feels the same way that he feels, even though he's obviously, one, way more intelligent than most people and a lot more socially awkward and introverted than the average person. So I think he's coming at it from that more unusual standpoint, but he's generalizing that to everybody where I think it doesn't apply to the same degree as it might apply to him. You know what I mean? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I don't know if that's true, but I just kind of got that impression because I was like reading some of the shit. And like I said, some of the shit that he says, there's nothing weird about or nothing wrong. And some of the shit he's probably like right about. And some of the stuff I was like, yeah, he's got a point there and shit like that. But some of the stuff he's saying, I'm like, that's just you, man.
He's projecting.
That's just you. And it's like, and you're projecting that onto the rest of us. Like, you know what I mean? It's like technology doesn't make me particularly unhappy or anything like that. I know it does make some people unhappy because, some people do say that, but it doesn't bother me at all. It's like, I don't think that I would want to go back, and I don't think that's the fucking solution.
He's one of those dudes that Captain Kirk was trying to get to Eden, man. Remember that fucking, remember that Star Trek episode where they're fucking trying to get to Eden? And then when they get there, it's fucking poisonous. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, he's one of those.
Like I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just you. Like, if you're like, hey, I'm not real into this whole technology. I don't like social media. I don't want a cell phone. I just want to go live in the forest and have a simple life and fish and shit like that. I just want to go do that. Go do that. You're not hurting anybody. You're not hurting a single soul. You just go and you live your best life. But if you want to do that, don't make everybody else do that too, because not everybody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? I'm not shitting on if you do want to do that, but I'm just saying don't take something that you want to do and pretend like everybody else wants to do the same shit you want to do, because they don't. I certainly don't. I don't want all my technology taken away. You can pry my air conditioning from my cold dead fingers. I'm just saying right now. Among other things. Yeah. And the thing about it is like, well, shit, man, it's like I make my whole living practically like on the internet. It's like I would be hosed if I had to like fucking go back to, I mean, I could do it, but it would be like a really long process of adaptation, because I've kind of built this whole thing around like technology and everything like that. And it's like, if I didn't have that, I'd be in big trouble. And honestly, and I've said a lot of times before, I'm real introverted. I don't really like all that much like doing face-to-face stuff on a big, scale or anything like that. I don't mind it like in small doses, but I don't really like having to interact with people face-to-face. Like it's very exhausting for me. So, I mean, then when the 90s came along and the advent of like email, it's like, oh my God, I can send to people. I don't have to talk to people on the phone anymore. Oh my God, that's fucking awesome. And it's like the fact that I can, write books and like I can do all the shit myself and I don't have to see anybody. I can just put shit up. That's amazing. I don't want that taken away. So like I said, I'm almost like, I get Ted Kaczynski's like being introverted and all that kind of stuff, because I have that too, but it's like I went in the opposite direction. I think technology is like really good for people like that. It like facilitates relationships and stuff like that, when maybe, like I said, you don't want to get out and like talk to people face to face because it's exhausting or whatever. It's like, you know, it's really much easier nowadays.
He couldn't foresee the internet.
That's what I'm saying.
He didn't know anything about that.
So I'm kind of wonder like what he's feeling about it now, because like I said, he's still alive. He's in a supermax, but in Colorado. But I don't really know. You know, I don't know what the terms are. Like, I don't know how that works. Like, what access he would have to a particular level of technology to let prisoners go on the internet. I would imagine probably not.
No.
I mean, he writes letters and stuff.
Yeah.
You would think that. I mean,
they don't let him have a computer.
No. I mean, I feel like even if they did, it would be very off-brand for him to go and build a website.
Yeah. No.
Like on Wix or something.
He doesn't have internet.
How fucking funny would that be, though?
I
Like,
think some of them are allowed phones, but I don't think he has internet.
I just thought that would be really amusing. Honestly, it's probably like some people though that that are followers of Ted, because he does have admirers like that have read his manifesto and are like, yeah, bro, you're right on. But I'm like, yeah, but you're on the internet though. I mean, Ted would not have advocated like you being on the internet, even talking about Ted. You know what I'm saying? That was kind of against his whole deal. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just like a funny kind of like paradox, I guess. So yeah, there was just some like other stuff. Yeah, this is what he was saying before about surrogate activities. So he's saying that because we live in a technological society where a lot of stuff is kind of like taken care of or was like easier or whatever, that now people are doing what he called surrogate activities, which were activities directed toward an artificial goal that people set up for themselves merely in order to have some goal to work toward, or let us say merely for the sake of fulfillment that they get from pursuing the goal. But see, I'm like, well, what's wrong with that though? I don't really get like what. I just think he's just a really angry person, and he thinks everyone else is like an angry person too. But I don't know. So yeah, and so another thing that he said too was that one of these surrogate activities was scientific research, and he's like, so, and this is a quote: "Science marches on blindly without regard to the real welfare of the human race or to any other standard, obedient only to the psychological needs of the scientists and the government officials and corporation executives who provide the funds for research." Which, like I said, to a degree, that's probably true, but I don't think that's true like across the board. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So I'm just skipping through some shit that he wrote. Like, yeah, he was against like the Sylvan Learning Centers. He just thought he just was one of those motherfuckers that thought like everything was indoctrination. But like I said, I'm not really sure what do they want though? Like, what's the alternative? Like I said, if you want to check out of that, then you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But it's like, why do you think everyone else should?
He thought it was going to end the world.
Right.
And enslave people and stuff, though. You know, yeah, it wasn't just for him. He thought it was ending the world, from what I remember. It's a long time ago that I read it.
Yeah.
But, you know, that it was going to be kind of like global enslavement and fucking, then eventually like a collapse.
Which, yeah, and like, so people are still saying that nowadays, but yeah. I don't know. So, let me see. But yeah, like I said, that's kind of like, that's the thing. A lot of people, like some philosophers and things like that, you'll get a lot of them that are like, yeah, he had some good ideas, which, like I said, he did. You know, some of the shit in there was, you know, he had a point and everything like that, but obviously you have to come out and be like, well, obviously, like, bombing innocent people is really not the best way to go about, like, getting your beliefs out there, son. So I don't really know what the problem is there. So before the manifesto was published, Ted Kaczynski's brother, David, as I mentioned before, his wife, Linda. Now, the thing about it was that Ted and David had been estranged for quite a while. I think it had been like a decade at this point. I'm not sure, I think the reason, and I'm not sure exactly what the reason was, but I heard that the reason was that for whatever reason, Ted didn't like or didn't want his brother to get married to Linda, who eventually became his wife. I don't know if he didn't like her or he just didn't like the idea or whatever. But that's what I heard was kind of like the thing that caused the big rift. He said, well, we didn't communicate a lot prior to that. Now, the thing about it was that David was also kind of a guy that's like, oh, I like to kind of live off the grid. He had some land, I think some like in Texas or something, and he had a cabin out there too. But he's like, I went out there to just like, can I unwind and like do some self-reflection and stuff like that. Whereas like Ted went out there to kind of like, fuck you motherfuckers, I'm just gonna get away from everybody because of that. Like, it seemed like he was coming at it, Ted was coming at it more from a place of like anger, whereas David was coming at it more of a place of like peace, you know what I mean? Like, so it was kind of like two, and David said he thought that was very strange because he's like, Ted was so anti-technology and anti-science. He's like, even though that was kind of like how his mind worked, it's like his mind worked in a very binary fashion. So he always thought it was very ironic that Ted was so anti-technology, like in the way that he was. But so David said that he had also like spent a lot of time like kind of off the grid, like on his own land, like in Texas or whatever. But they had been estranged, possibly, allegedly, because Ted, for whatever reason, didn't like him getting married to Linda. I don't know if it was because he didn't like her or whatever. So they hadn't really talked in a while. But when the manifesto was published, his wife, Linda, kind of read it, and she was like, that sounds like Ted. As I said, she had never met him in person, but she had read some of his letters and stuff, and she thought that the turns of phrase that he used, like just the stuff that he said, like sounded like him. Now, at first, Ted was kind of like, I don't know if it is, but he went and took out some old letters and started reading them. And the more he read, he was like, yeah, I think it actually might be. Now, before he went to the FBI, he apparently went to their mother and said, hey, I think Ted is the Unabomber, and I'm thinking about turning him in. What do you think I should do? The mom obviously didn't want to believe it, and she's like, but after they kind of like talked about it, she was like, yeah, maybe you should, like, yeah, because David clearly like loved his brother very much, and he just thought that he was protecting his brother and protecting other innocent people by turning him in, which he absolutely was, so that was the right thing to do. But also before he went to the FBI, he also he got a lawyer, he got all this other stuff, and he went to the FBI and he said, look, I'm gonna tell, I'm pretty sure this is my brother, and he gave over all the letters and everything, but he's like, please, 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 do not tell Ted that it was me. Don't tell anybody that it was me that turned him in, because he was afraid that Ted would maybe lash out, not necessarily even against him, but maybe would lash out against some innocent people or like that, because he would get mad, because he would feel betrayed. So he's like, I really don't want him to know that it was me that turned him in. I don't want anybody to know. Unfortunately, though, it leaked. So I will say, though, that because you remember how I said there was a $1 million reward?
Yeah.
David actually did get that, but because he's a cool guy, he actually donated the money to the victims. So I thought that was a cool thing that he did. But basically, so yeah. So the shit leaked out, that it was him that had done it. Now, at first, and this is I don't know why this made me sad. This whole thing just made me sad. They told Ted at first, when they first told him, it was your brother David that turned you in, basically. And Ted said, my brother would never, that's impossible. He loves me. He would never do that. And then, when they were like, no, it really was him, Ted just would not talk to his brother anymore. And as far as I know, still hasn't. Although David keeps writing to him. He sends him a letter, every single month. But he's Ted will not write him back because he feels betrayed. But I was but, the fact that he loved you, that's why he turned you in. Maybe one day he'll understand that, but I doubt it. So, yeah.
He was at war, man.
That's what I'm saying. Well, yeah. But the thing about it is, he seems like the kind of guy that, and it's really sad. I mean, it didn't have to go this way. Like I said, he honestly had so much he could have given the world, but he went this way, and it really doesn't help anybody, and it's just a fucking tragedy, man. It's just a really, really sad story. And it's sad for his family, it's sad for his victims and their families, and it's it could have gone a different way and it just didn't. And it was just, I don't know. This really like made me sad, this whole fucking story. But yeah, so like I said, I kind of feel like David too was thinking that maybe, you know, before they caught him, that there was going to be like a Waco kind of situation or some shit like that, because he wasn't sure. Like, he hadn't talked to his brother in a long time, and he's like, the shit that he's writing is like, sounds kind of out there, like some fucking, you know, like that kind of shit. So he didn't really know what was going to happen. He didn't know what his state of mind was. And honestly, when the FBI went there and got him, I mean, when they pulled him out that house, it was all over the news, right? And he looked like a crazy person. You know, his hair was all crazy and fucking shit like that. So he probably wasn't too far off. He didn't know what his state of mind was going to be, like, at the time. So, I mean, that's the thing. I kind of lost my place of the thing. All right, what are we reading? Oh, okay.
Yeah, read.
No. Michael says, I agree with most of it. He was saying that because people in power would have access to the same technology, that it wasn't good. They would use it for bad instead of good. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he was right about that. Like I said, I'm not saying that he wasn't. I don't think he was crazy. I mean, I think that he was onto some shit, but I just think that he went like too far. You know what I mean? He went like too far off the deep end, and obviously like took some very, very unfortunate methods of like getting his message across. Senor Stick said, was he crazy or in need of a Xanax? That's, I mean, he needed to like chill out. Like I said, he needed to like not be inside his own head all the time. I think that was one of his main problems too, because he probably just got in this like endless feedback loop where he was just where stuff kept like building up in his mind. You know what I mean? So he got arrested in April of 1996. I remember this happening. It was all over the news. So they pulled him out of his cabin in Lincoln, Montana, and he was, Wikipedia said, found in an unkempt state. Yeah, he looked a little unkempt. They pulled him out. Yeah, he looked like a nut. I mean, his hair was all wild. His hair was all wild. Like his pants, pants had big fucking holes in them. It was all crusty and everything like that. So they go through his cabin. Because, you know, they're pretty sure it's him, because, you know, they've done the linguistic analysis and all that kind of stuff. Like 60% sure, we're pretty sure this is him. And the linguistic analysis and everything like that was enough for them to get the search warrant, but they still weren't entirely sure that this was their guy. But then when they get into the cabin, they became 100% sure that this was the guy, because they found a whole bunch of bomb components. They found 40,000 handwritten pages. That included a bunch of like bomb making experiments and descriptions of the crimes that the Unabomber had already committed. And also they found one live bomb that he was getting ready to mail. Yeah. So, you know.
Found a typewriter too, I think.
A little, yeah. So, you know, a little incriminating. And they found they also found the original typed manuscript of the manifesto. So, yes, they're like, oh, well, okay, that was easy. This is the guy, clearly. So at this point, I think this had been, I don't know about now, it's probably like been surpassed at this point, but I think this was like the most expensive investigation that the FBI had undertaken up to this point. So yeah, I mean, there were some people that thought the manifesto had been written by a different person and blah, 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 but I doubt it. Like I said, even his own sister-in-law and brother like recognized it, then it probably was that dude. So yeah, so like I said, David, even though they said that he would be anonymous when he turned his brother in, somebody, they don't know who, leaked it to CBS News, and it was all over the place. So the FBI were still doing the search warrant like when it leaked. So they had to like hurry up and finish the shit, because like I said, they didn't want like shit to go sideways, like if he found out that his brother turned him in, blah, blah, blah. Now, as I mentioned earlier, after he was arrested, they investigated him a little bit for the Zodiac crimes, but they quickly determined that he was not in the area. He was actually in Illinois, like during some of the crimes, so it couldn't have been him. Basically, what they wanted to do, at first, his lawyers advised Ted Kaczynski to enter an insanity defense. But Ted Kaczynski did not want to do. He was adamant that he did not want anyone to see him as insane because he thought, I guess, that it would undercut his message if everyone just thought he was a crazy person. Now, they gave him a court-appointed psychiatrist, and this psychiatrist diagnosed him as having paranoid schizophrenia, which, yeah, probably. I mean, that seems pretty accurate. But said that he was competent to stand trial. Now, basically, there were some other ones, though. There were a couple of other psychiatrists who came up with a book later on that said they didn't think that he had paranoid schizophrenia, that had been what they called a political diagnosis. But I'm not sure. I mean, just like from the writings of his that I read, that sounds like paranoid schizophrenia to me. I'm not a psychiatrist, but that sounds in line with other stuff by, that was written by people with that disorder. So a grand jury indicted Ted Kaczynski in April 1996, 10 counts of illegally transporting, mailing, and using bombs, and was also charged with 3 murders, obviously, for the 3 victims that he killed. January 7th, 1998, Ted attempted to hang himself in his cell with his underwear, to avoid having to submit to a psychiatric evaluation, but they gave him another one anyway. So basically, here's the thing that I brought up earlier, that a long time ago, that you said you didn't know about. So this was apparently in the psychiatrist's report, like after his suicide attempt. So I guess she talked to him about his upbringing and his past and his teenage years and everything like that. He said that when he was at Harvard, and keep in mind that he was very young. He started going to Harvard when he was 16, so he was much younger than, most of the Harvard students were, and he had some problems because of that. He called what he was going through, he said he went through depression, and that he called acute sexual starvation.
Acute sexual starvation.
That's what he called it.
I know all about it. I know all fucking about it. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Acute sexual starvation.
Hell yeah.
You don't have
Jenny.
You don't have acute sexual starvation.
I'm like, Jenny. She's like, nah, fucking, I'm busy. Fucking, yeah.
Oh my God, poor you.
Yeah. Pecker in the hand and everything.
Jeez, Tom. You giving everybody acute sexual starvation vibes.
It's cute, man. It's acute sexual starvation.
Yeah.
So just sitting on top of the bed, peck in the hand. Starving, looking cute.
Starving
fucking for sex. Yeah. Looking cute.
Oh my God.
It's a cute sexual starvation.
Yeah, it's adorable.
Yeah.
So basically, this was this whole episode in his life. Apparently, this is, I guess, from the psychiatrist report. It says this culminated in several weeks of intense and persistent sexual excitement involving fantasies of being a female. During that time period, he became convinced that he should undergo sex change surgery. Like I said, what I heard from what I read like on a different source was that he basically went like an incel route where he was like, well, I'm never going to touch a woman unless I become a woman. It was kind of like that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of like what they said. So he actually, allegedly, scheduled an appointment with the campus psychiatrist to kind of get the ball rolling on the whole, because like I said, it's a huge, long process. So he was going to do that. But he even went into the appointment and like was in the waiting room and everything, but apparently like he chickened out. And so before he left, he just said, oh, well, I didn't really want to be a woman. I was just like afraid I was going to get drafted. And so I was like, okay.
No, you're in university.
Okay, clinger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He was at university. They're not going to draft him.
That's what I mean. It's like, well, that was the excuse that he used because he chickened out of like. Yeah. But he went through like a really weird like several week period where.
Didn't want his pecker cut off. I can understand it.
Well, he thought that he wanted to be a woman, which, like I said, I hate to like, I don't want to make fun of the dude. It's like, yeah, I know he killed a bunch of innocent people and that's fucked up, okay? But I mean, he wasn't right, and it's kind of sad because, like I said, he was so smart. He was such an intellectual giant. He really could have done a lot of great things, but he couldn't hack it. I mean, he just really couldn't. And a lot of bad shit was done to him too, like that experiment. Although, I mean, to be fair, he did volunteer for that, but he didn't volunteer for it knowing what it was going to entail exactly, because they didn't really tell him. You know what I mean? He just volunteered because he thought it was like a psychological study and he was going to make some extra money. But it ended up being like a 3-year-long psychological torture, essentially, like every now and then. So, and like I said, I'm not saying that was the main thing, but I'm sure it didn't help. You know what I'm saying? And because he was already the way he was, I'm sure that just exacerbated that whole situation. So, so apparently this is from Ted's diaries, like after he walked out of this appointment. He said, as I walked away from the building afterwards, I felt disgusted about what my uncontrolled sexual cravings had almost led me to do, and I felt humiliated, and I violently hated the psychiatrist. Okay. Just then, there came a major turning point in my life. Like a phoenix, I burst from the ashes of my despair to a glorious new hope. I thought I wanted to kill that psychiatrist because the future looked utterly empty to me. I felt I wouldn't care if I died, and so I said to myself, why not really kill the psychiatrist and anyone else whom I hate? What is important is not the words that ran through my mind, but the way I felt about them. What was entirely new was the fact that I really felt I could kill someone. My very hopelessness had liberated me because I no longer cared about death. I no longer cared about consequences, and I said to myself that I really could break out of my rut in life and do things that were daring, irresponsible, or criminal. So, being as how he might have written this when he was much younger, I kind of think that ties back into what I think John Smith was saying earlier, that maybe this whole manifesto thing that he wrote was just like a really, really long-winded justification for just killing random people, which he wanted to do from then. Like, I mean, from that paragraph that he wrote, it really just sounds like he wanted to kill people because he was mad and humiliated, and he, for some reason, offloaded that humiliation onto the psychiatrist, and that made him like, so he turned everything outward, the world is making me feel like this, so I'm going to take revenge on the world.
Could be that he wanted to kill a bunch of people, but then he had to say, well, who do I select?
Right.
So he selects targets, and he goes, who are the worst people on the planet? And then he comes up with these guys.
I kind of feel like that was probably more along the lines.
Right. Because these guys that are trying to enslave humanity, you know, really, from what I took of reading, I read it a long time ago, and then I heard it again on audiobook probably about a year ago. You can hear it on YouTube. A lot of the shit that he says is either true or based in truth, or it's something that might be true, and you're just kind of. It reminded me a lot of fucking AJ from InfoWars with technocrats, technocracy, and shit that bad corporations do. So, I kind of thought there was something to it, but doesn't mean there's anything really to take Kaczynski, I guess. You know what I mean? Like you said, he may have just wanted to kill a bunch of people, and they just selected who he thought was the worst people.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that sometimes, like I said, and particularly in people that are really intelligent like this, sometimes they have particular fucked up base urges, but they will construct these really Byzantine, elaborate justifications for doing that to make themselves feel better about it. So, you know, maybe he just wanted to kill people because, like I said, he felt humiliated or he felt like insecure or something like that. And he wanted to kill people, and maybe that made him feel guilty or it made him feel base or stupid or something like that. So he's like, well, I have to have, I'm not saying this is what he consciously thought, but he's like, well, I have to have some kind of reason. I have to have some kind of... So he constructed the very high-minded sounding philosophy that would essentially give him justification for killing just random people or people that he wanted to kill.
Though. I'm pretty sure he thought it was true.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's immaterial. I'm just saying that it might have been something... Yeah, he might have believed it was true, but he used that as a reason and a justification for killing people, to make himself feel better about doing it.
He's like, I'm going to have to kill some people. Who should I kill? Who's the enemy? And who's the enemy of mankind? I'm going to save the world. You know, it was that kind of mentality. You can kind of hear that in his writings, or even in an audio book, somebody reading it. He's trying to save the world from evil, in his opinion. You know.
I was gonna watch motherfuckers like that.
Yeah.
Another thing that he said, this was also from his diary, was, I intend to start killing people. If I am successful at this, it is possible that when I am caught, not alive, I fervently hope, there will be some speculation in the news media as to my motives for killing, as in the case of Charles Whitman, who killed some 13 people in Texas in the 60s. We did a show about him as well.
Yeah.
If such speculation occurs, they are bound to make me out to be a sickie and to ascribe to me motives of a sordid or sick type. I kind of feel like that's why he was like writing everything down, because he didn't want people to think that he was just crazy or mentally ill, and that's why he was doing it. Like, he had a reason. But like I said,
I remember when they arrested him, they offered him an insanity plea, and he kept turning it down.
And I said that earlier. Like, he was adamant that he would not take an insanity plea. He absolutely would not.
He wanted people to read his manifesto.
Yeah.
He wanted people to know why he was doing it.
Right.
And back in the old media back then, you really couldn't really find out very easily what it was, why he did it. You'd have to get those old newspaper articles that printed his shit, and they were long gone by the time you saw that on television.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you could just fucking get on Google and pull it up back then. I didn't know what it was about really at the time. It wasn't until later I was able to figure out what had happened.
Yeah.
That's the way a lot of the life was pre-internet. You don't really know what it is. You're just taking the news at their word, and you really not really sure you can believe them, depending on what it was. Like, I didn't believe a lot of that Waco stuff. Like, I could tell that they set those people up.
Did we do a show about that? We did, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we did.
There was absolutely no reason for the Waco fucking raid. If they wanted David Koresh, they knew he went into town all the time. They could have just arrested him in town. They just wanted to have a big training mission and have it look good on television and justify the fucking training budget for ATF. That's really all it was. It was going to be a real good mission. They thought it was going to be easy. Something you could put on television. Like, see, hey, yeah, we're making our money. No, the fucking Branch Davidians fought back, and then they all died. It was a fucking disaster for ATF. You know, dumb. And then their fucking vaunted fucking badass fucking SWAT team. Fucking, I remember seeing that shit on fucking television. We were in the Army at the time, watching it. Their badass SWAT team getting up on top of the roof and bravely trying to duck in through the window, and then you can see the bullet holes fucking as they were shooting out the fucking side of the, shooting through the walls. Like I told you guys, fucking that's what pros actually do. You know, I've got guys with fucking bell-fed machine gun experience. They're shooting through the walls, and they just fucking sent that fucking entry team fucking running. Legs fucking flapping, shot them full of holes. Yeah. Just because you're in those uniforms, that's no protection. They thought it was going to be easy. No, some of them dudes died. And then all those Davidians died, and all the little kids cooked. Fucking terrible. They had their children down underneath there. And they could have just arrested the dude when he went into town, but they wanted a big spectacle.
Senor Stick says, high intelligence is technically a mental illness. Yeah, in some ways it is.
Once you pass 150, you're kind of
once you get up in that, yeah, well, that's the thing, and it's not any fault of their, like, usually, like, intelligence is a good thing, generally, but once you get so intelligent that you're, like, significantly more intelligent than people around you, then you're gonna suffer. Because, one, you know, you're a lot more aware of shit that's going on. Two, you don't really have that much in common with people anymore, so you're very, like, it's very isolating. You know, and you're not gonna, like, your interests are gonna be different. It's just, you're almost like a species apart, you know what I mean? And it's just hard for you to fit in. And I think that's what happened to Ted, because he skipped a couple grades in school. He was so far ahead of everyone else. And so he really had a kind of thing. And like I said, I went to school with a kid like this that skipped at least one grade, maybe two. And so, like, in high school, he was a couple years younger than everyone else, and he was much smaller than everyone else. And, you know, he was kind of what they would call, like, you know, nerdy. And so he got picked on, he got bullied, and he was not emotionally mature, you know, to the same level as some of the other teenagers. And so he was having all kind of problems. Like, a lot of times, like, he would have, like, tantrums, like, in the class and stuff, because he was a kid still. And I think kind of the same thing happened with Ted. I don't know, like, what the solution is, because you know, it's kind of a situation where, I mean, I guess it's good that they take someone there's like, you know, gifted programs and stuff like that, but
They should never send little kids to fucking university.
I don't think, I don't know if that's such a great idea. Like, I get that, I mean, maybe they can have some other programs for them. Maybe they can do like some kind of homeschooling thing or some kind of like thing where they can just maybe take classes there with other kids like that are their same age at least.
Put that kid on vacation till he's college age.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a great idea to like throw a 16-year-old into a college with like a bunch of like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I mean, that's a huge maturity gap.
Yeah, and he's not going to be able to compete in the sexual market. What the fuck?
It's like, he might be smarter than all those people, but he's not socially adept as those people.
College is about getting laid, a lot of it. So, you know, why the fuck, you know, you don't send a little kid to that.
So, I mean, you know, I kind of feel like that's probably not a great idea. Like I said, I get why they do it. Like, yeah, they get bored and they, like, stir up shit, but there has to be some other way. Like, people that are that intelligent, they really need, like, I don't know, like, individual schooling or something like that. Like
tutoring.
Yeah, some kind of tutoring. So they don't, like I said, because if you let them just like be in the class with like people that aren't as intelligent as them, they're going to get bored and they're going to start acting up, and that's not good either because then all the other kids aren't learning. Yeah. But you know, you have to have some kind of solution, and I don't think that's the best thing to do because I think that really like fucked him up. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that fucked him up like over the course of his life. But so basically, they were at first when he got arrested, they were seeking the death penalty. Although his brother David came in and said, please don't give him the death penalty. He's like, I would hate to think that I turned my brother in and then he got killed, for Christ's sake. So he basically said, I really don't want him to get that. But basically, so what Ted ended up doing was that he avoided the death penalty by pleading guilty to all of the charges. So he actually pled guilty in January of 1998. And then later, he actually attempted to withdraw the guilty plea, saying that it was involuntary, but, you know, all the requests were denied. So basically, they just put him in prison. He got, like, life, I think it was, like, 8 life sentences or something like that. No possibility of parole. And he is, as far as I know, he's still sitting in ADX Florence, the maximum facility Supermax, which is in Florence, Colorado. And he's still there. So, like I said, he's been writing his ass off in prison. He's written all kind of letters. They said that he's maintained regular correspondence with over 400 people. They keep all the stuff too, like they keep all the copies of all the stuff, so they keep it in a collection and shit like that. Oh, interestingly, Wikipedia said the names of most correspondents will be kept sealed until 2049. So I'm assuming, like John Smith mentioned earlier, that probably the FBI is like keeping tabs on like who he's writing to in case there's like some other motherfuckers out there like him that he's writing to. But yeah, they also auctioned off a bunch of his stuff to, you know, make back money to like give to the victims' families, shit like that. And he actually kind of sued about that, like, because he's like, oh, freedom of expression, you can't like auction my stuff off, but he lost. So there you go. And I think that's probably, is that it? Yeah, 2010, they published a collection of his essays and a corrected version of the manifesto. So I guess he went in there and like, but yeah, they republished it in 2010 under the title Technological Slavery. And as I mentioned earlier, his brother has been writing to him every month, as long as Ted has been in prison, and he has never received a reply because I guess Ted still feels betrayed that his brother turned him in, which, like I said, I don't blame his brother for turning him in. That was the right thing to do. I know it's like was probably terrible and hard to do, but had to be done. He was killing innocent people, like I said. Jeffy Hart said, how about some sort of enrichment program for young geniuses? Something that would offer the kid opportunities to discover themselves while tiding them over for a few years. I mean, I kind of feel like when I was in school, like in the, let's see, it would have been early 80s. They had just started doing, I don't know what they call it nowadays because I don't have kids, but back in those days, they could, you know, the gifted program, or at least at first they called it the enrichment program, and then they called it gifted program. But what they did at first was that you would go to like regular classes, but then once a week, at first when I was in, I think it started in when I was in 3rd grade, maybe earlier. But first they would take me and a couple other kids, and they would bus you to a different school, and then they would have like other classes in there, you know, like more advanced or whatever the fuck. But then they started doing that like my first few years of elementary school. And then in 4th grade or 5th grade, they went to like full time, where they pulled all the quote unquote gifted kids out and put them in their own classes, like separate from everybody else. But prior to that, we just went like, I think it was once a week. But when I was in 5th grade, I actually really liked them because they were, you know, they taught you like regular shit, but they were a lot more unstructured. So you got to do like all these really cool projects and all this other kind of like immersive kind of stuff that you maybe probably wouldn't get to do like in a more regular class. But I don't know. I kind of like the idea of just doing it like once a week, or just being like one class and then being with regular. And I mean, once we got into junior high, obviously we had, you know, regular classes too, because you had to do gym and you had to do that kind of shit, you know, in health class, and everybody had to take those. So you only had a few classes that were quote unquote advanced or AP or whatever the fuck they called them back then. But in elementary school, like my last couple of years of elementary school, they did full time. But before that, it was just like once a week. I don't know how they do it nowadays, because like I said, it's been a long time since I've been at school. A long, long time. All right, so I guess we're done talking about it. You all right? You seem like you're...
I'm fucking sleeping. I'm getting ready to fall asleep.
You getting ready to fall? It's only 8:30.
I've been drinking all day.
Well, that's your fault. Riding down to the biker bar. I don't know, a little bit.
All right, I'll make it something.
A little bit.
I'll make it something.
All right. So yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show this evening. This was actually like a really interesting topic, and I can't believe that we hadn't done it up until now, but now we've done it. Now we have to do Timothy McVeigh, I guess, because that's another one that I was surprised that I didn't do. But we'll get to that one eventually as well. So yeah, as I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for chatting with us. Thank you for super chats if you gave us any. And we will see you guys again on Friday evening when we do our Friday night sidetrack show, which, if you're new here, we just kind of have drinks. I mean, we have drinks now, but where we just have drinks and talk about whatever. We don't have a topic. We just talk about whatever comes up and chat with you guys. So hopefully you can come and join us for that. And we'll see you guys again on Friday night. Good night.